Welcome, everyone, to the second annual Campus Nature RX Symposium. I'm Don Rakow, an associate professor in the School of Integrative Plant Science at Cornell University, and the co-coordinator, along with Dr. Dorothy Ibes, of the Campus Nature RX Network. Those of you who are newer to this group may be wondering what Campus Nature RX, or CNRX, is all about. We're a loose federation of colleges and universities that organize programs that encourage and support students and other university and college personnel to engage with nature. This simple matter can be accomplished many different ways, as you'll be hearing from our 12 presenters today. We've known for centuries that spending time in nature is beneficial to human health. Rates of stress, anxiety, and depression can be reduced. Blood pressure and salivary cortisol levels can come down, and our ability to concentrate and recall facts can be improved. These are all vitally important conditions for college students who've been suffering from unprecedented levels of both psychological and physiological problems. And that was even before the pandemic made things even worse. The college experience is many things. Academic courses, of course, but also an opportunity for students to socialize with friends, learn new skills, become involved with athletic or artistic groups, and to spend time figuring out who they truly are. It can be easy for a student to feel that these competing demands leave no time for being out in nature. Also, across the country, campuses certainly vary in how much green space they have to offer. But one of the basic tenets of Campus Nature RX is that every school has at least some patches of green where students can take a quick break to unwind, rebalance, and feel the earth. We're so pleased that the CNRX network, begun just 2.5 years ago, has now grown to nearly 30 campuses. If you're interested in having your school join the network, please send a request to Dr. Dorothy Ibes at dcibes@email.wm.edu. If, however, you're not quite ready for that next step and would like to learn more about programs at different campuses before initiating a program at yours, you can start receiving our monthly CNRX newsletter by emailing me, dr14@cornell.edu. And you'll see instructions for both of those options on our campusnature.com website. So before we hear from our first speaker, I'd like to recognize those individuals who were most instrumental in putting together today's symposium. They are Dorothy Ibes, who I've already mentioned, from William and Mary, Jennifer Roberts from the University of Maryland, and Jeanette from, Jeanette, you are from?
I'm from Calvin
University. Thank you. Thank you so much. So at this point, I am going to turn things over to Dorothy Ibes to introduce our first speakers.
Thank you so much, Don. And a reminder to everyone that an updated agenda for today's symposium has been posted to campusnature.com. You can also find information there about how to sign up for the newsletter and to sign up as an institution, a formal institution of the network under our About page. So presentations in our first session discuss how to start Campus Nature RX and related programs. And I am going to start us off today. So my name is Dorothy Ibes. I'm faculty at William & Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. I teach for environmental science and policy and the Center for Geospatial Analysis. I've been teaching a William & Mary course called The Science and Experience of Ecotherapy for the last 5 years. I'm a trained ecotherapy guide, and I also direct the Parks and Ecotherapy Research Lab. So today I'm going to share my experience building a campus nature lab and provide tips for those who might be interested in doing something similar. So the Parks and Ecotherapy Research Lab, formerly known as just the Parks Research Lab, is a campus lab I direct under William & Mary's Environmental Science and Policy program. So our mission is to cultivate nature-connected communities that foster mental health, sustainability, and environmental stewardship. And we do this primarily in 3 ways. First, by conducting interdisciplinary use-inspired research that enhances understanding of the connection between mental health and nature engagement. Second, by applying research to inclusive campus projects that support diverse students and spending more time engaging with nature, both indoors and out, and developing a meaningful relationship with the natural world. So these projects include the more traditional Campus Park RX program, which for us is a peer-to-peer program, but also a campus green space map, campus tree tours, Nurture with Nature, a documentary short film I co-produced with Tanya Stadelman, the filmmaker. Also a collaboration with the library that's resulting in an outdoor study space, integrating biophilic design and ecotherapy concepts, and many more. And thirdly, by training the next generation of diverse green space and ecotherapy practitioners, researchers, and advocates. You can see here the list of current team members in Pearl. So instead of diving into the minutia of any one particular program today, I felt what might be most helpful would be to discuss the larger structure of the lab for those of you who may be interested in creating something similar. And I'm hoping this will provide you some useful ideas and tools, and most importantly, the confidence that you don't need to do this perfectly to create something meaningful on your campus. So I'll begin by starting the story of how I started my lab. So I started a research group during graduate school to network with other parks and open space researchers on and off campus at Arizona State University. Then when I was hired at William & Mary in 2013, I kind of took the group with me, but I could find no peer collaborators on campus. And I was getting very lonely in my office here pictured on the left. But I also noticed all these wonderfully talented and enthusiastic students all around me, pictured on the right. So I wondered if they might be interested in doing this work with me. So I posted an announcement on my department listserv inviting students to join the lab to do some research and build a green space database. Honestly, I didn't really know what I was trying to create or if anything would happen. I had no encouragement to do this from anyone. In fact, I learned years later that one of my mentors at the time said that he didn't expect a postdoc, which I was at the time, could pull this off. But he has since been one of my biggest supporters. So within literally 15 minutes of the announcement posting, I heard someone running down the hallway towards my office. And this was Luke, pictured here on the left. He said he was so excited about the opportunity that he had to come immediately to talk with me. So of course he was in, and he, along with the other students that joined the lab that summer, ended up collecting some of the most critical data for what is now the campus green space map, which you can check out at campusgreenspace.wm.edu if you're interested. During that same summer, the students and I also collected survey data for our subsequent journal publication on senior-friendly parks. So I've advised over 40 students in the lab over the years since Luke was my first. from a variety of disciplines, including environmental science, biology, psychology, neuroscience, geology, economics, American studies, urban studies, Hispanic studies, history, you name it, all across the spectrum. I've tried many different configurations for the lab, but at this point, we've evolved to a particular kind of structure I'm going to share with you today. So first, each student in the lab has a primary task. For example, a research assistant, a program manager, or a GIS specialist, but they are encouraged to consult each other and collaborate on projects as appropriate. Some students work in pairs on specific projects, so they have someone to bounce ideas off of. Some semesters we focus more on research, sometimes on projects and programs, and sometimes a mix. We meet for 3 hours a week in person, synchronously, and have an all hands meeting most of those weeks to kind of touch base. Students present to the lab a couple times each semester to share their progress and obtain feedback. If a student contributes significantly to a research project, they become co-authors. I really emphasize self-care and fun over backbreaking productivity, as I feel like that defeats the entire purpose of the endeavor. But despite this, or perhaps because of it, I feel Pearl students have accomplished quite a bit over the years. We have a Google Drive. We organize all our files. That's accessible to everyone in the lab. So this is great for kind of sharing materials. And then several years ago, I finally created a website to keep track of and share all the things we were up to, since it started to become very unwieldy to explain it to people in a nutshell. So I'm really happy with how the lab has evolved over the years, but that does not mean things have always gone smoothly. Not every project or event has been a success. Not every student has loved the work. We are not wildly productive. Sometimes we have wasted time and resources going down the wrong path. Projects I expected to take a semester took years. At certain times, people on campus did not understand the value of what we were doing. But luckily, it turns out perfection is not a requirement of success in this type of work. I have found, as I'm sure many of you have as well, that when it comes to promoting nature connection, nature does the heavy lifting. We are the facilitators, we provide the inspiration and support, and nature really takes it from there. So despite many imperfections along the way, I feel Pearl has been a success for a couple of reasons. First, we've published some research I feel has contributed to the field. Two, we've received feedback from those on campus that our projects and programming are meaningful and valued additions to the William and Mary experience. Three, students have reported that they've really enjoyed working in the lab and that the experience has been valuable to them academically, professionally, and personally. So I survey my lab students at the end of each term about their experience. Now, there's a lot to say, so I've summarized the findings in this slide, but they cited the value of the research experience, additions to their job and grad school applications. They noted the experience influenced their academic and career goals, their own behaviors and perspectives. They felt working in the lab increased their social capital, being able to be with like-minded people, and their optimism, which I thought was very interesting. They also cited having gained invaluable life and career skills. I'm going to share a couple quotes. There are so many good ones, but a couple I really like. Pearl made me feel like I contributed positively to a school I love. I see students in the green chairs and think about how they'd otherwise be holed up in the library. Working with Pearl has made me more aware of my own habits and helped me prioritize spending more time outside. I have started to appreciate the little things about the outdoors, like leaves on trees or the flowers, or even something as simple as deer and rabbits. A pre-med student said, I'm excited to bring my knowledge of ecotherapy and park RX to the medical community. So my takeaway from these results is that even if your lab or your group doesn't accomplish anything earth-shattering to transform your campus into some hotbed of nature connectedness, or you don't get published in the Journal of Nature, you will have still done a very great service to those who will go out into the world after this experience. I've actually asked a current Pearl student, Margot Vanyan, to share her experience working in the lab today. She'll be talking about this for a few minutes during session 3. And last but not least, I feel the lab has been successful because it brings me immense joy. Doing work that's meaningful with a group of passionate and talented students, watching their creativity and bringing this work to our campus and seeing them integrate it into their lives, being able to talk nonstop for 3 hours every week about nature and ecotherapy and parks with others who also geek out on this has been so amazing. And getting some research publications out of all of it, it's pretty much heaven in my book. So from the start, my own enjoyment and fulfillment has been my guiding principle, and I encourage you all to allow this to guide you in this work as well. So how might you begin a group like this on your campus? So first, I recommend taking an inventory of what I'll call your ingredients. So reflecting on my experience, there's several essential ingredients and a few nice to haves. I would count essential as the following. 1, a passion for this work, but you have that or you wouldn't even be considering this. 2, perhaps the most challenging is time. In my case, I negotiated to have a course release to run my lab. 3, a steady flow of enthusiastic students. Thankfully, this has always been the easiest part of this equation for me, and I wager you would find the same. 4, a stomach for experimentation and what they call a growth mindset, perhaps. In other words, expect you'll make mistakes. You may waste time and money down fruitless paths. It's a learning process for everyone. I really don't feel any amount of intelligence, talent, support, or enthusiasm can buffer you from these challenges. 5, comfort challenging some potentially long-standing higher ed paradigms and norms, such as what a campus lab does or looks like. And 6, these all wrapped up in a very healthy supply of patience and most of all, perseverance. And I'd say it'd be helpful to have these additional elements, a website. This has been huge for us. We had over 2,200 unique visitors to our site in the last year. So that's helped get out our name and what we're doing, and also build this kind of concept of the importance of nature engagement on campuses. Peer collaborators are wonderful if you can find them, particularly on your campus. The support of your institution and our department is also wonderful if you can get it. And this may or may not include an advisory committee, campus champions, or funding. But in my experience, if you're short on one or more of these, it's not necessarily a deal breaker. In fact, some of these may actually hinder or slow down your progress, especially in the beginning. Remaining flexible and agile with low overhead and no solid commitments can be very beneficial until you have solidified a configuration that works in your context. In my case, staying low key until I got my bearings was critical. So here is a summary of these ingredients, and we will be posting these slides on the website if you would like to reference any of them again. So I'd like to end with a couple of takeaways. First, to quote Robert Louis Stevenson, I recommend you sit loosely in the saddle if you try to do this. Starting with minimal expectations and planning can sometimes be the best approach. It reduces the pressure, allowing you to remain flexible so you can refocus as needed. And a light hand helps keep the experience enjoyable for everyone involved, including yourself. Second, we can take lessons from nature about the importance of diversity, movement, evolution, and I'd also say patience. Try different kinds of approaches and various collaborators and configurations. This one was hard for me, but don't get stuck doing something that just isn't working. Even if you've invested a lot of time or money or effort in it, as they say in storytelling, sometimes you need to kill your darlings for the sake of the bigger picture. These entities constantly change and evolve, and sometimes progress is very slow, but that is healthy. Third, learn from others and be inspired by others. For example, those presenting today and at last year's symposium. You can find the recordings for all of those presentations on campusnature.com. Definitely read Don Rakow's book on campus nature RX programs and consider his framework for the development of a campus nature RX program, both of which you can find under resources on, again, campusnature.com. Fourth, ultimately do what you can do and what you want to do with what you have. Fifth, remember to protect and prioritize your own nature time. As they say in the airlines, put your own mask on before you try to put it on others. I have learned to accept that this means projects will take longer. I have to say no more. I have to get really good at prioritizing and balancing, particularly since I have two very young children. But such modeling, as social scientists are well aware, sends a very powerful social message that nature engagement and time in nature is not a luxury, but an essential ingredient to a full and healthy life, and so helps shape healthy social norms that can cultivate a culture of nature connectedness on your campus and beyond. Finally, speaking to all my fellow recovering perfectionists out there, you don't have to do this perfectly for it to be worthwhile, perhaps even transformational for yourself, for your students, or your campus. Again, you have nature on your side, and I cannot think of a more inspirational and powerful ally. So thank you all for coming again today. I hope I shared something valuable for you. Please visit us at parksresearchlab.com to learn more about what we do, listen to podcast and radio episodes about these topics, find resources for practicing and learning more about green space and ecotherapy, find links to follow Pearl on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Yes, my students have made a TikTok. They're amazing. You could also find the link to watch the documentary short film I co-produced with Tanya Stadelman called Nurture with Nature. And I will leave you with this wonderful quote by Eckhart Tolle. And I think we have a couple of minutes for any questions.
Okay, well, welcome to everybody on the East Coast and on the West Coast, whether it's good morning or good afternoon for you. I'm excited to be here. Last year I attended the symposium for the first time, and so I'm excited to present to you today. I'm actually have two screens because I'm helping behind the scenes, so trying to figure out, actually I might switch it to this one. There we go. Trying to figure out which way so you can see me and I can see my notes. Well, a little bit information about me. I direct the educational programs at the Ecosystem Preserve here at Calvin University. It is in Grand Rapids, Michigan, so it's a small university on the campus. It's about a 1/4 acre here that our gardens and preserve is. And along with me in this effort to create a implement a Nature RX at Calvin program is my director, Dr. Jamie Skillen, here, and we co-created it together. So I'm going to give you a little bit background of how we went about creating it in the last year. And so in the fall of 2020, I actually began writing and researching about the program and ways to implement it on our campus. And it became a part of my actually master's work. I'm currently in a master's program about creating community programs. And this was actually took over my whole master's program basically. And I used it for a multitude of classes and just kept building on it. And so I first initially wrote a policy paper, and that paper I presented to my director, and he got all excited about it and said, let's do it, which was amazing. And then while that was all happening, I met Don in a APAGA meeting, and he said, hey, there's this amazing symposium, come join us. And so I did, and I got to hear from Dorothy and Jennifer and be inspired, and others. And then Don invited us to meet with him. Jamie and I met with him and got to pick his brain for over an hour. So I will say that is something that I'm gonna toss it out. Don's willing to do. Hopefully Don is. But it was well worth it. If you're interested in starting a program, please talk to him, talk to me, talk to Dorothy, others. And then we began to actually implement the program in February of 2021. And I documented it as part of an action research project for my master's. So part of this presentation is based on that. Dorothy, if I can have the next slide. So a little bit about Calvin. I told you a little bit, but I want to add some more details to that. Is that it's because I'm sure a lot of you don't know about it because it is a small university. It's a 4-year undergraduate institution, focuses on liberal arts education. We have around 3,000 students, and that includes undergrad, graduate, and seminary. And the mission of the university is to equip students to think deeply, act justly, and to live wholeheartedly as Christ agents for renewal. We are a faith-based campus, and that goes through everything we do here. The really cool part about my job is that creation care is a priority within our Christian faith, of the Christian Reformed faith. And so that means that is something they really put a focus on here. And we have a wealth of green space on our campus. So if you can see the campus map, you'll look and see there's a lot of green space, and that quarter on the top part is the ecosystem preserve. It's 100 acres of the 400-acre urban campus. Grand Rapids, if you don't know about it, is actually the second largest city in Michigan, right after Detroit. So we are in the city limits and as an urban preserve. Next slide, Dorothy. Some ways we serve, you'll see some photos of the ecosystem preserve and how we serve our college community. We serve with career development. The majority of my staff, similar to Dorothy, almost everything that we do here is actually is run by Calvin students. So we have up to at times 25 students, both in land management and education, and communications and marketing that help us do our job here. And we also have volunteers and service learning opportunities for students, as well as I lead nature and mindfulness walks. We have lots of curriculum connections and partnerships with different professors, from engineering professors to art professors to professors in the sciences. Occasionally do fire pits. We got a fire pit permit from our city. So we have these cool fire pit gatherings for students to just come be in our gardens and sit outside. And then a huge part of what we do fits well within the NatureRx context is this idea of Sabbath space of rest and relaxation, and that the preserve is the Sabbath or the quiet space for the busyness of rest of campus. And so we're encouraging students to just walk the 5 minutes over to just be in this quiet space, to be present. Next slide, Dorothy. And so how we went about this is I proposed an implementation based on Don's wonderful book and the outline that he had in his book. And so you can see it up here. Phase 1 was to investigate and commit, join the NatureRx network in the spring of 2020. We have joined, but we still need to get ourselves up on the website. I'm on it, Dorothy. Phase 2 is to cultivate and create a steering committee. And this is a campus-wide steering committee that I'm going to talk more about, and engage student organizations and cultivate relationships with faculty and staff in the academic program. And we did that. And again, that will be in the next couple of slides, how we went about that. And phase 3, which is what we're currently in, is to design, engage, and implement passive and active programming, and launch a welcome week fall 2021. We're still working on that, but it's all work in progress. As Dorothy said earlier, it's we are doing what we can with the resources we have. And phase 4 will be to evaluate and record successes and challenges. And so we will do that at the end of our first year. Next slide, Dorothy. So we built support. You can see my lovely word, our cloud. We built support with a variety of different departments. And so that was my main research question for my action research project. And that was, how do we build institutional support amongst faculty and staff for this NatureRx at Calvin program? And how could we motivate these busy staff and faculty to invest in this program and join our steering committee, and what best practices could come out of this process that I could share with others. So we invited 21 internal stakeholders from a variety of departments, and you can see the departments in the word art, from student life to campus ministries to art, economics, the honors program, our communications and science, arts and sciences program, our president of Student Senate to represent the student body. The majority of those folks, about 21, showed up for our initial meetings. So that was pretty exciting. They were all done via Zoom because it was during COVID last year. But it was very exciting to be able to see everybody in the room and being very positive about this new program. Next steps. So just if you're not familiar with action research, I would give you a little bit background on that. It is basically addresses and works to solve problems in real time using systematic inquiry approaches and takes into account those dynamic systems in the workplace. And so, as I said, this was during COVID. It was during during COVID, we couldn't meet all together, which would have been ideal. So it had to be all done on Teams. And we were trying to build this community capacity across to get everybody excited about this program. So how we did it is we held 2 introductory meetings. We gathered a lot of qualitative data that I had to process. That was fun. During the meetings, and that was things like, let me think some of them. Some of the stuff was like what was being done. So what was currently being done on the campus that would already meet NatureRx criteria. And then, and those were across the areas of academics and teaching, extracurricular activities, leisure, and mental, spiritual, and physical health. And then we also gathered additional data using a survey, and this included data for those that couldn't join the original meetings, and some of them then provided through the survey. It also, we collected things of what would they dream, what would they hope for when we were doing this. And then following that, we had 8 people join our steering committee, and we held a multiple, I think 4 steering committee meetings that helped us create a mission statement and a strategic plan to guide us into this next couple of years as we move forward. Next slide. So here's our mission that everybody came up with. And so it's a collaborative initiative that communicates the benefits of engagement with nature, improved mental, physical well-being, and a sense of community, and facilitates this engagement through inclusive programs and self-service resources. That was really important for us. The self-service part is that we're all busy and stretched pretty thin here at the campus. And so we wanted to make sure we had programming that we could do signature programming, but also all the great programming and bring it under a communication umbrella across campus to get our message out there. So we're really seeing this as a way to take all the good work we're already doing and bundling it together in communicating this message of getting outside and that nature is medicine. Next slide. So some reflections on the program as I think back about what we've accomplished and where we need to go. The initiative is bringing together academic and support services departments across campus together, which was really amazing in a coordinated and collaborative way. Lessons learned and data gathered during the first 2 cycles of the action research provided a foundation and direction for our future work. And this reflections include overall response and support for NatureRx at Calvin was very, very positive. And we had high administrators that joined some of the initial meetings, and they were very positive about it. As long as it didn't affect the bottom line and we could do what we could do, they're all for it. And data gathered of what has already been done to get members of our community to spend more time in green spaces, and dreams of what we would like to do was really important. And so the tremendous amount of work is already being done. And so, and then the dreams of where we could focus our energy on. We got 6 members to join our steering committee of 8, including Jamie and I. Though we've lost a few because a few left the university this summer and fall. So we're gonna pick back some additional members up in the future. And really, we're trying to focus on collaboration and communication about existing programs and not creating new programs. But as I said, sharing what we already do under and putting it under this umbrella of let's get outside because it's important for our mental and physical well-being. And if I would have one future wish, it would be one of the main needs is to identify in the data is the need for new temporary and permanent outdoor teaching and gathering spaces. We are in a more northern climate, and that was the one thing that was identified. We have very few benches for people even to sit outside. And certainly we have very few like teaching and learning spaces. And so that was something that the professors that were the faculty in our group were really wanting. Is to implement that. Next slide. So moving forward, I want you to meet James and Amanda on the top row. We just recently hired them. They are 2 new university events assistants, and I hired them to help me develop and implement programs and partnerships to engage Calvin students with the mission of the Preserve and the Nature RX at Calvin program. And then the bottom picture is of Natalie. And Natalie, this summer, we hired her and based off of the work that Dorothy has done and the work that is done by several of the other universities in the Nature RX, she helped take all the inspiration from them and built our new map this summer to highlight green spaces on campus and around our community. And so I will say, though, we've had a slow start to fall of 2021, and we have yet to have a regular meeting or kick off the Nature RX at Calvin program, but we're going to pull it together. And, you know, as Dorothy says, it's just one step at a time. So, and one of the things I found is we really need somebody to really coordinate the group because we're all busy people moving in different directions. We all want to do it, but somebody to coordinate it is something that I would say we're struggling with right now. Dorothy, one of the final slides. So this is just it hasn't launched yet, but this is the draft of our Nature RX at Calvin map that you can see. And so hopefully it will launch in the next few weeks. We're just figuring out how to tie it into our Calvin University website at this moment in time. And then our Calvin students will do some publicizing to get folks to know more about this in Nature RX program. Last slide. So if you want to learn more about our efforts, or if you're interested in reading my 50-page action research that project that documents the whole process, I'm more than welcome to send it to you. Maybe somebody outside of my professor and my classmates will read it. But it is there. It actually has the whole process that documented and all of the agendas and the strategic plan and everything that we put together is in that document. So you're welcome to email me. My email address is on that slide. You're also welcome to contact my director, who is also the co-chair, and for if you have questions about our program. Thanks.
Well, hello again, everyone. And I would like to spend the next several minutes sharing with you about the Nature RX at Cornell program. Our mission, as you can see on the screen, is to reduce stress and thereby increase both physical and mental health in students through their engagement with nature, and to cultivate in students an increased appreciation of nature. The Nature RX at Cornell program started between 7 and 8 years ago, and I will be talking about the various ways in which it has developed since that time. Next. but I don't want to give the impression that programs that promote spending time in nature are a completely new thing. In fact, I recently came across a paper titled Nature RX Reemergence of a Pediatric Nature-Based Therapeutic Program from the late 19th and early 20th centuries by Michelle Kondo and colleagues. In that paper, the authors argue that programs that engaged young people with the outdoors were popular 100+ years ago as ways to address such issues of childhood health as underweightness, contracting polio, rickets, and tuberculosis. Now, those issues mostly sound quite antiquated to us today. And in contrast, today, we're most concerned with the prevalence of obesity, high stress levels, and depression in children and youth. Next. In this same period, the nature study movement had a real heyday at Cornell. This was the early part of the 20th century. And such Cornell luminaries as Liberty Hyde Bailey, Anna Botsford Comstock, and Louise Agassiz promoted outdoor study to children around New York State. Its motto, which I just love, as penned by Agassiz, was, quote, "Study nature, not books." And I think that that was meant a little bit facetiously, but it certainly does point out the strong emphasis that these early nature educators put on the outdoors. Next, please. So returning to the Nature RX at Cornell program, one way to engage students is with a club. Members of the Nature RX Club could organize such things as weekly nature walks, natural areas cleanups, invasive plant removals, geocaching contests, and in winter, in the north, such activities as snowshoeing, sledding, and cross-country skiing. I want to talk a bit about the club at Cornell. In Dorothy's excellent presentation, she talked about trying different things and not being overly committed to efforts that don't work. I have found that maintaining a Nature RX club of students has been, at best, an uneven affair. Students are distracted by 100 different things. As I mentioned in my introductory remarks, students graduate, students develop problems that keep them from focusing on something like a club. So this year, I think we have finally hit on a formula that I think will be successful. The officers of the club, at least the president and vice president, are graduate students in the Cornell Masters in Public Health program. And they're older students that have more of the maturity and experience. And then the additional officers are undergraduate students, and they are holding weekly walks and other activities. And I think that the combination of having graduate students in charge and having weekly activities is giving this club real momentum this year. Of course, during the pandemic, the club was essentially inactive. Next, please. A second way that we carry out the Nature RX program at Cornell is through an undergraduate Nature RX course. And some of you may recognize that individual over on the right. This is from the course back in 2019, and that's Dr. Robert Czar, the director of the Park RX program. More about him in just a bit. So I have two major objectives in running and offering this Nature RX course. The first is to expose students who are primarily first and second year students to the variety of beautiful natural and landscaped areas on and near the Cornell campus. The second objective is to use experiences outdoors every week, along with required readings and reflective essays, and as a result, have each of the students develop a more intimate and committed relationship with the natural world. For the past few years, colleagues at UC Davis and I have each offered Nature RX courses, and in both cases, in the first class, we have students complete a questionnaire about their level of involvement with nature and how they are utilizing nature to improve their overall well-being. We then have them fill out that questionnaire again during the final class of the semester to really evaluate ways in which the course has impacted their feelings and use of nature. Next, please. In a paper that was recently published in the Journal of American College Health, our colleagues at UC Davis and I revealed that students, as a result of these courses, had greater levels of comfort with nature and were more likely to go out into nature to relieve their stress levels. Next, please. We also take a pretty broad definition of nature, and here are some of the students this past Monday on a very chilly day being led on a mindful botany tour around Cornell Botanic Gardens. One last thing I'll mention about this class. In the past, I've had anywhere from 12 to 16 or 18 students sign up for the course. This year, I had to actually cut off registration at 30. And I think what that is a reflection of is the degree of stress and anxiety that students are feeling and their recognition that a course like this can help to relieve the stress. In answer to the question that was just posed in the chat, this is a plant science course which is jointly listed with an initiative at Cornell called Living Where You Learn. And that joint listing provides funding for the course, which funds our field trips. I'm also able to give each of the students a copy of Florence Williams' wonderful The Nature Fix book, which we use as a text. Next. A third component of the Nature RX at Cornell program is nature prescriptions. And this is a good example of how each campus must carry out their Nature RX program in a way that works best for them. So earlier, Dorothy mentioned that trying to set up their prescription program through the health clinic was not successful, and she switched to the now very successful peer-to-peer nature prescription program. At Cornell, we have actually found that working with health professionals has been a very good conduit for getting students nature prescriptions. Next. In the early going, we modeled this on, there he is again, the wonderful Dr. Robert Czar, who really started the nature prescription program in America and who has been the instrumental force behind the creation of Park RX America. So each student who was prescribed nature was given a little quarter card, as you see there on the left. But then recently, next, we've been able to actually get Nature RX discussed and recommended as one of the options on the student's electronic health record. In the fall of 2019, 23 different health professionals gave out nearly 700 prescriptions to students. In addition to that, colleagues at Cornell Health had developed a survey which was sent to each of those 700 students in an anonymous and confidential manner to determine the degree to which, well, A, they remember getting a Nature RX prescription, and then B, if they did, the degree to which that was actually altering their behavior and their sense of well-being. Well, we were just gearing up to resume this program in the spring of 20, and as with so many other things, then COVID happened. So we've resumed the nature prescription and anonymous questionnaires to students this fall, and I will be anxious to see the analysis of the data that gets collected. Next. Yet another component of our Nature RX program is our website. And both Dorothy and Jeanette talked about their interactive mapping programs that they have developed for their campuses, and those are wonderful. In our Nature RX website, naturerx.cornell.edu, we depict 17 unique natural and landscaped areas on the Cornell campus and provide both descriptions of each of those sites, as well as GPS-based directions on how to walk to the site. Next. So our real goal with the Nature RX website is to change students' mindset from one of feeling like, oh, well, I know going out in nature is good for me, but I don't have time for that, to more of a sense of nature is all around me. And if I have 10 minutes, here is a site that I can go take a break in. Next. A final component of the Nature RX program is a series of e-posters that we have developed that are now broadcast on media walls all around campus, residential halls, dining halls, the Cornell Health Facility, and various academic buildings. And the theme of the current e-posters is, did you know that time in nature? And individual posters focus on can help improve your exam scores, your sleep patterns, your social life, and your overall stress levels. And for each of these posters, we actually include citations of papers that have verified those benefits. Next. So as both Dorothy and Jeanette have very generously mentioned, I am the co-author with the late Gregory Ells of Nature RX, Improving College Student Mental Health. I'm going to go off script a bit and mention a very disturbing and yet ultimately uplifting story. Very shortly after this book was published, Dr. Ells took the position of director of the CAPS program at the University of Pennsylvania. After being in that position for just a few months, for reasons that none of us still understand, Dr. Ells took his own life. That, of course, was extremely disturbing to me and everyone close to Greg. But he was someone so committed to student health and well-being that I think it ultimately was overwhelming for him. And my takeaway from this disturbing story is that each of us must cherish every day in our lives. And as professionals working with students, we must find ways of improving their lives however we can, and particularly through nature contact. Next, please. In the Campus Nature RX book, we describe a step-by-step framework for developing a Campus Nature RX program. Earlier, Dorothy described her process, which was, by the way, much more graphically interesting than what I have to present here. But some of the steps that we have followed have been to organize an advisory committee, just as Jeanette has been doing over the past year, securing the support of the administration. And I will say that our administration has been very supportive, vocally, if not financially. Thirdly, I think it's important to inventory the green spaces on campus so that as you develop a map or website, you'll know which areas to highlight. Next. Fourth, to engage students, and I've spoken with you about our student-led Nature RX Club, its pluses and minuses, partnering with the Campus Health Center, and that's been the focus of our Nature Prescription program, developing an app, website, or map, and then measuring the program's impact. And this can be one of the most challenging ones. And I'll finish with that by saying that part of why we are so interested in having students respond to that survey about the nature prescription that they've received is that we feel that that is one bona fide way in which we can assess our program's impact. So thank you very much. I would be happy to answer one or two questions, although I know that time is moving on.
Thanks so much, Don. I am just always blown away by what you're doing at Cornell. So thank you for sharing that with us, and congratulations on all the great work you're doing at Cornell. Our next presenter, we have a very special treat. Tamberly Conway is going to lead us in a guided nature experience.
Well, it's such an honor to be here, and thank you for the invitation to guide a very brief nature and forest therapy remote session. And normally these sessions would be anywhere between 2 and 3 hours in length. So today we'll get a little taste of nature and forest therapy. And so if next, I serve as an Association of Nature and Forest Therapy certified guide, and also a trail consultant for forest therapy trails. Next slide, please. And I'll challenge each of you right now, just look around you, even if you're indoors. If you can get outdoors, I invite you to pulse outside right now. If you can't, just pick up some things around your desk, at your home, wherever you're located, in your office, things that represent nature to you. I just walked around and picked up a few things from the natural world to be with me and join me in this journey today. And if you're able to use earbuds, maybe have one hanging out so you can sense the space around you, and just place yourself in forest therapy mode, giving yourself that time and just to reconnect to nature. So getting out of your head, out of your mind, and into your heart and body. This is an embodiment. Next slide, please. Oh, well, I thought I had placed in nature, but what we're going to do is I invite you to first close your eyes or just gaze downward. No screen time right now. And so this is just an opportunity to reconnect with all of your senses, noticing the pleasures of the senses that bring the pleasure into you. And so first, with your eyes closed, I invite you to your breath. I invite you to breathe in deeply. And I also invite you to stand, if you wish, just to get out of that chair and just be rooted to the ground beneath you, whether it be indoors or outdoors. Closing your eyes, breathing in deeply, noticing your breath, noticing how your body feels to be breathed, noticing how your body feels to expand as your breath ignites and then releases, and release that breath into the earth beneath you. Noticing the expansion of your chest and your belly as you breathe in, and noticing how your body changes upon the release. And then as you breathe in, I invite you to notice the scents, the aromas in the air around you, indoors or out. There's senses, there's deep scents and aromas surround you right now. I wonder if any of these aromas bring memories to you, knowing that this is one of our most powerful senses. Bringing in these aromas, noticing memories that may come, noticing how these aromas fill your body. And next, noticing how your sense of smell is so deeply connected to our sense of taste. And again, noticing, maybe opening your mouth gently, breathing in like you're breathing in through a straw, sipping in the air around you, maybe even playfully sipping the air in one direction and then the other. Noticing the sensations of the tastes in this air. Maybe even taking your tongue and licking your lips and even the corners of your mouth, noticing something salty or maybe even something sweet. Again, maybe reminding you of a simple pleasure. And then I invite you to the sense of breathing once again, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, releasing, and now bringing these sensations to your sense of sound, hearing the natural world around you, remembering that nature is everywhere, that even we as humans are nature. We are part of nature. And so even noticing any of those sounds that we create, and I invite you to first notice your sound. Notice the sound of your breath as you breathe in and out. And I wonder if this creates any symphony within the symphony of sounds around you. Noticing maybe the sounds of your own body in this symphony. And next, pulsing out from your body just a bit, noticing those sounds that are a little more distant. Just around your body. Noticing how they might weave into this symphony, into your symphony, melded with the symphony of sound around you. And then lifting your hands to your ears and cupping your hands behind your ears. Maybe like your favorite furry friends. Pulling your ears towards the front. Turning your head in different directions, noticing any sounds around you. Noticing the sounds that are farthest away. And then dropping your hands to your side and pulsing your palms outward. I wonder what sensations you might feel upon your skin. I wonder if you feel coolness wrapping the skin of your body. Or maybe the sun even shining through a window. Or the heat that envelops your body. The texture of your skin, both beneath your clothing and that which is exposed. Bringing your hands together, feeling, touching the sensations of your own skin. And then if you brought something with you that reminds you that nature is everywhere, maybe bringing that to hold next to you, touching it, feeling it, noticing its sensations mixed and melded with yours. Noticing if you're holding something in your hand, noticing the weight. Noticing the weight of you and this piece of nature that now is a part of you. Noticing how your body feels held to the earth. Whether seated or standing. I now invite you to your imaginal sense. And this is not necessarily imagination, it is just this sense of noticing. And I invite you to imagine as if you are a tree. And this tree is deeply rooted into the ground. with your head as the crown and absorbing the sunlight around you, grasping this energy, feeling the sensations of the heat, feeling the energy flow through you, your body, your trunk, your branches and leaves being pulsed down into your trunk, creating a resilience within you. Imagining your feet or wherever you're seated, imagining roots extending from beneath you, extending into the soil. Imagining your roots being enveloped in mycelium, which pulses energy and connection and nutrients to all of these trees around you. Imagining all of us in community, in this community of trees, in this forest, as we are connected and bringing this energy together. I wonder what your roots and your mycelium might hold and might share with others, with these other trees and others in this forest community beneath you. And then inviting you to draw this energy, this shared existence beneath us, back up through you, your roots, and into your trunk. Again, that resilient trunk that holds you tightly to the ground. Now I invite you to just maybe shift your weight from side to side, imagining you as this swaying tree, noticing these roots being held beneath you. Noticing how you feel held today. Noticing how you feel held among these other trees in this community. And in a moment, I'll invite you to open your eyes, but I'll ask you not to do so just yet. If you're able, I invite you to just turn slowly, again with your eyes closed, just turning in a circle, or if you're seated, just kind of turning from side to side. And I invite you to turn into the direction to which you feel most called. It can be for any reason. I invite you to turn there now and just be in that space with your eyes closed for a moment. And when you feel that you are standing or seated in that direction to which you feel called, I invite you to gently open your eyes and notice the life around you. And I wonder if the life around you, these beings, might notice you too. Next, I invite you to just, in your own mind, now from your heart, but into your head, just tell yourself what you are noticing. What are you noticing in this moment in time, in this space, which we call now? I wonder if you notice colors. I wonder if you notice a breeze. Or I wonder if you notice how the other beings might notice you. Now I invite you for our next invitation to reach out and take something that may have drawn you in today something from the natural world that we might not normally notice, but that we did today, and bring this to you. Noticing with all of the sensations of these 5 senses, plus the imaginal sense that we just rediscovered. I invite you to take whatever it is into your hands and just noticing with all of your senses, noticing the minute details and whatever this lovely touch of nature has brought to you. Maybe noticing the texture, bringing whatever it is to your face, maybe touching your cheek, bringing it to your nose and breathing this in deeply, whatever this may be to you. Noticing the different colors, and the sensations, those that give you pleasure in this moment. Being present with these sensations. I wonder how this might help you to feel rooted now. I wonder what joy might arise in you in this moment, in this circle. And in this practice, one of the aspects of nature and forest therapy is sharing. And so I'll invite us to go around our circle with a short share. And this share is simply, what are you noticing? And so if you feel called to share, either in the chat or even in this room by taking off your mic, and I'll actually go around our presenter room. I can kind of see you all. Dorothy, I wonder if you would like to share, what are you noticing in this moment?
Thank you, Tamberly. Well, I had a lovely moment with my ivy plant here. Let me find this guy, which we can't really see very well, that hangs out next to my desk all the time. And I really enjoyed just spending some time noticing that there's some new leaves coming, because sometimes I feel like it's a bit neglected, but it's growing beautifully. So that's what I was really taking some joy in.
Thank you so much for sharing, Dorothy. And thank you for bringing your ivy into our circle. Thank you. Dawn, I wonder if you'd like to share what you're noticing.
Well, I am not at home this afternoon, actually at my brother and sister-in-law's house in their office. And this is right in the city of Cleveland Heights, but I'm looking outside to a dense planting of a number of hemlock trees that are kind of interlocked. And it's a pretty still gray day. And I'm just looking at the beauty of their green needles against the gray sky.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you for bringing them in with us as well. I wonder, Jennifer, would you care to share what you're noticing?
Well, I actually am looking outside my front window and seeing the trees. I see people walking past, but I see mostly the trees kind of swaying back and forth. Couple squirrels kind of like fighting or playing. I never know what they're doing. But it's funny because in this moment of having this session, there were no cars that went past me, and I actually live on a fairly busy street, and so it was nice that there was no disruption from humans, so to speak.
Thank you, Jennifer. Jeanette, would you care to share what you're noticing?
Yes, I actually have had my window open. I'm sitting in my office at work, and so the preserve is actually right outside my window. And there's a pond and all the leaves are changing. But I've really been noticing is it's about 50 degrees, but I can't quite close the window yet because I still want to feel just that breeze. So I've been really paying attention to kind of the really crisp, cool fall air, that breeze that's coming into my office as you've been doing the meditation.
Thank you so much for sharing. And you're welcome, anyone, to place your shares in the chat. I'm not sure if we can unmute, but please feel called to share. And I see Corey. Oh, Corey had to head out for another ecotherapy that he's doing today. So we're all interconnected there. See, I wonder, I see Nina. Would you care to share what you're noticing?
So I'm in my office and I don't have a window, so I'm basically in the middle of a building, but I'm in Florida, so it's actually been a nice sunny and warm day, and on my way into work I noticed the crane family that was hanging out on a traffic island, and I noticed an alligator in the stream that goes right by the building where I work that was hanging out in the sun. Right now I'm noticing that some of the arugula that I planted in my office so I would have some life in here has started to sprout.
Lovely, lovely. Welcome, arugula. And I'll say that generally we move through this practice with a standard sequence of invitations. And although we won't go deeply into this invitation, I feel called to share it with you all because I notice that it is often one of the most powerful invitations, because this practice is not about moving from one place to the next. It's not about getting from here to there. It's about being in the space and the presence of wherever you may be in the world. And the prompt is what or who is in motion. We generally move through this invitation for about 15 or 20 minutes. And you can notice people's tension at first, because it's so difficult to get out of our heads and what happened yesterday or what we have to do later today. And so oftentimes just this act of slowing down to the point at which you're moving so slowly, or maybe even just sitting in one spot, noticing what or who is in motion, can literally slow your rhythm so that your rhythm becomes one with the natural world around you. And this is when so many beautiful things arise, like this yellow jacket on the fruit that I hold here. And I invite you to, throughout your day, stop in the moment. And maybe even with your own food, just mindful eating, breathing in whatever it is that you will embody, that you will take in. And as you take a bite, rolling it around in your mouth, noticing the pleasure of what this offers you and your body, noticing that share. And I'll have to say that I'm noticing this beautiful seed pod that came from a locust just around the bend. And I've never noticed the velveteen sensation. I've always looked at them and thought of them as being shiny and smooth. And so it's surprising me today. It's like slowing down. We begin to notice. We begin to notice these things around us in the natural world. And so I invite you to once again, maybe picking up something that you brought with you again today, no matter where you are, inside or out, and just brushing whatever this is on the palm of your hand, noticing the sensation of touch. And then I invite you to bring your palms together and cupping your hands. I invite you to close your eyes and feel the weight of this forest, nature, indoor air, wherever you may be. Notice the sensation of whatever it is that you're holding now. Feeling the weight. And then I invite you to simply raise your hands to your cheeks, maybe to your nose, touching your chin, running your fingers through your hair, feeling the sensations of self, feeling and noticing all of those unique features and the beauty that you hold. And then inviting you, again, closing your eyes, but bringing your hands to your chest and placing them upon your heart. Noticing your heartbeat. Noticing life. Noticing your connection with yourself, with the earth, and even with others here in this circle. We are here, connected to one another, in this space where we are all bringing forth this connection to nature, to all of the beings that surround us each day, to this more than human world that we are a part of, not apart from. Feeling that bodily connection to all that is around us right now. Again, I invite you back to your breath. Breathing in, holding it at the top of your breath, sipping in one more, and then releasing this energy that we hold in reciprocity to this earth that gives us so much each and every day. And in gratitude, I just invite you to be in your mind, in your heart, even a whisper. I invite you to share that gratitude with the earth in this moment. And maybe even sharing what you will do to support and reciprocity for this inner exchange of connection that we hold with our earth each and every day. Now I'll invite each of us to just share maybe a few of these words of gratitude to our earth. This is generally our final community that we share. And so imagining that we are giving back in a tea to our earth, something of gratitude that we would like to share. And we can popcorn out if you have something to share. And you can also share in chat if you wish. And I share gratitude for each of you today. And I share gratitude for our Mother Earth that holds us. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to bring us into nature connection, either indoors or outdoors. Thank you, Dorothy. And I'll pass the nature microphone back to you.
Thank you, Tamberly. A very special experience. The next two sessions are going to provide kind of short overviews of innovative approaches to campus nature programming at different institutions around the country. And we will start with Haven and Stacy from UC Davis.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you so much to the organizers. My name is Stacy Parker, and I'm with the UC Davis Arboretum and Public Garden, and I will be co-presenting with Haven Kiers, who is a professor in landscape architecture. Our talk today is aimed at those starting new programs, and since this is a lightning talk, we wanted to emphasize just the key components of our success model, which is summarized by our title, Designing Nature RX with Nature in Mind. And you'll see we've used the word nature as an acrostic for our presentation. Next slide, please. So Nature RX wouldn't be a Nature RX without nature. Nature is all around us and therefore presents a huge opportunity. And at UC Davis, we have come to think of the campus as a living laboratory. Far from just a backdrop to university life, it's an opportunity to see, touch, feel, experiment with, and contribute to. We engage with nature by inviting our students into our work so that they may experience it firsthand. We call this our Learning by Leading program. You may have heard about it. You can always ask me more about it. This not only awakens their curiosity for the world around them, it also enhances and deepens learning and fosters a meaningful connection to place, providing an experience rooted in a sense of place. In awakening the senses to their surroundings, we connect them to nature. Next slide, please. Our next key component is in finding alignment. Alignment is not just a goal in our organization, it's a goal throughout our whole institution, from UC Davis's strategic plan to the long-range development plan for campus planning. And you'll see with this alignment diagram, it's about aligning our organization's mission with that which the world needs from us, what our institution needs from us. And when the little arrows in the middle, which represent our programs and activities, all align to meet those aims, we can feel and benefit from the true power of alignment. Next slide, please. So time is one of our most precious resources. So designing with time in mind makes this work possible. For instance, health and well-being has been written in as one of the 5 primary strategic goals in our 80-year plan for climate change, the Living Landscape Adaptation Plan. We also have built strategic partnerships into our work, enabling what we call win-win scenarios in which their program offerings are broadened while we benefit from their support with time-intensive activities such as communications, marketing, and registration. Another innovative example is Haven's Landscape Architecture Design Build class, which designs and builds landscape enhancements on campus. We've also made plantings, Nature RX programs for staff and faculty. We've made reading work days a community engagement project. We've used large-scale gardening projects as team building for our new student cohorts. It's all about building Nature RX into your work. So next slide, and I'll turn it over to Haven.
Okay, so then the U for us is university. And this is a key one in that it's really about using what you have and the brain trust in this university, because there are so many people who work with nature, who do amazing research, and we've just been able to like capitalize on that and go into the Botanical Conservatory and do watercolors with, you know, world-renowned watercolorists and landscape architecture professors, and really just like explore things that we wouldn't be able to unless we were able to pull from what was already here at the university. Okay, next slide. And then this other one, research, which is key, because this is what I learned as someone who was previously working in the Arboretum and has now become a fancy professor. When I was at the Arboretum, there were ideas and people would be like, okay, that's cool, Haven, and they'd kind of pat me on the head. And now as a professor, like, for example, I have this sheep mowing project where we're using, actually right now as we speak, we're using sheep to mow campus lawns. And when I was at the Arboretum, everyone thought that was a really neat idea. But now that I call it research, everyone's like, of course, how do we make this happen? So really, like, so much of my research is now linked into the Nature RX, and all of it is, how do I get people? How can I spread seeds into the urban landscape? How can I use these sheep mowers, use the things that we have on campus, bring people out into nature and call it research? So if you can't do it yourself, collaborate with someone under that research umbrella. All right, next slide. Oh, we missed the engagement one. There we go. So really the key part is, you know, it's about engagement. It's about making nature, making spending time outside something that people want to do and making it really fun. So like today is like crazy Nature RX day for me. So, you know, we've got this presentation. I mentioned that we've got the sheep mowers out. We're actually doing a felting thing with the sheep. So it's come felt with the sheep mowers. And we have people coming and they're doing felting. And then after this, Stacy and I have our Nature RX class, and we're going out. If you see the slide of the students and their waders, that's what we're doing today. And we're going out to Poudre Creek and we're catching fish and we're seeing what is, you know, what's there. And we're meeting with a fish biologist. And so it's fun. Like, even though it's like lots of stuff going on, it's amazing to be able to be outside, to play, to look at bugs, to go up in the tree bucket, and really just enjoy spending time outside. And then final slide. So putting it all together, we are so pleased with ourselves for coming up with nature, put together nature, alignment, time, university research, and engagement. And there you have our Nature RX program. Thank you so much.
Very clever. Thank you so much, and Haven. And please, anyone who has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. You know, even if it's during the presentation.
Excellent. So I'm Cheryl Wheeler, and I am a program director of international specialized programs at University of Washington's Continuum College. And I've been working with the University of Washington's sustainability office for years. I've been here since 2005. And we recently started a project for community engagement. And we came up with this idea for forest bathing maps. And so I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. Next slide. So as I said, this is created by the UW Sustainability Office Sustainability Action Plan Committee for Community Engagement. It's kind of a long name, and really what our target is to double engagements with the concept of sustainability across the university community. So students, faculty, staff, everybody who's involved at the University of Washington. And we wanted to make sure that we involved all three campuses. We have two campuses that are not the main campus, and there's kind of sort of a tendency to forget that they're part of the university. And so we wanted to make sure that we highlighted them in this project. And you know, we all know the point of forest bathing is to find really great places to relax and connect with nature and improve your mental health in the space where you are. And we were able to combine our resources with the resources that were already offered by the University of Washington Botanic Gardens. And then we created the map with ArcGIS story maps. Next slide. And I just heard in the previous presentation, you work with what you have and that your university is a brain trust. And I really have to say, like, the things that came together when we just sort of started saying, oh, should we do some kind of forest bathing thing? Like everybody in the committee just jumped up and said, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And so there was already somebody on the committee who knew how to use the ArcGIS, that they'd been using it for sustainability tours of the campus. The Botanic Gardens was already doing online and in-person forest bathing activities with audio, and that image there is just one of the buttons on the Botanic Gardens website. And then the Whole You, which is our like holistic health and well-being for university community, mostly staff and faculty. They were already promoting forest bathing, so they were already promoting it with articles. And so the engagement committee just took all of these resources and recombined them to create a new resource. Next slide. So I do a lot of project management and coordination and leadership in my role. And so I'm kind of this person that has to take something from a concept to a final product. And so it was really good for me to be the person coordinating this, because I was able to step up and say, hey guys, let's put these things together. And I was able to be a champion for the project, but I was also able to find champions because I was so enthusiastic about it, and everyone on the committee was so enthusiastic about it. We were able to find supporters, and then also find people who want to help, and then let them help. You know, so if you're excited, they're excited, something great's going to come out of it. Socializing the idea is important. I would say that the University of Washington's sustainability office has a pretty good reputation, but not, I would say like 10 or 15 years ago, it wasn't real. It was sort of a fringe thing. And so if you're in a place where your organization isn't yet recognized, like you were just saying, somebody pat you on the head and say, oh, isn't that nice? You know, keep working it, you know, just keep socializing it, because eventually people are gonna buy in, and it's worth it. And then of course, follow up and be a squeaky wheel, keep asking questions, keep saying, hey, what about this? And if somebody hasn't responded to you, you just keep asking, you keep talking to different people, and you build like this this base of support. And so everybody's talking about it, and then it becomes a topic that everyone's excited about when you keep socializing and you keep squeaking. Next slide. And then in terms of what we actually did to make the map real, we had to make sure that we had good photography, which was actually harder than we thought it would be. We were lucky that the user experience with the ArcGIS map is already very clean. But I would say it's really important that when you think about how people are looking at what you've created, you want them to be able to see it immediately. You don't want them to have to go through a bunch of clicks to understand what they're seeing. You want to make sure your map locations are really, really detailed and accurate, and that your site information is actually useful. If somebody is looking at a forest bathing map and there's too much information, it sort of defeats the purpose of using the map. If they have to kind of dig into too much stuff, you want them to focus on the place and not really get caught up in all of those details. And then it's really important to request and gather feedback on whatever you've created, make revisions. And then even if it's not perfect, you release it and promote it. I know that's really important. Sometimes we feel like things need to be perfect, but I think that we have seen that it's okay to go ahead and push something out there and see what happens. Next slide. And then of course, there are always challenges. I think our biggest challenges with this project had to do with map data location. Everybody was in different places, and also has to do with that second bullet there, that the staff work capacity for finishing and revising was kind of low. Everybody was in a different place. I literally didn't see anybody who I worked with on this project. I've actually only seen one of them since we started working on this in person. And so knowing that everyone's distributed and there are a lot of challenges there, you have to just be be aware of that. And then also, once the map has been pushed out, there's only one person right now who knows how to do the revisions to the map. So we're going to work on getting some students involved to make revisions to the map. Also, the campus was closed when we were working on this. I think it was over about 4 months in the summer. And it was just difficult to figure out who's going to go, who's going to take the pictures, how are we going to gather all the data. And then, of course, the health center associated with the university was just swamped with everything to do with COVID. And I'm in touch with them now, and they're going to promote it now. But just when we first started, they were not able to do anything. And then just in general, most people are going to have a short attention span, and there's information overload. And so you just have to consider that every time you're promoting or you're talking to anyone or doing anything, that it's better to provide like short bursts of information rather than, a 45-page research paper, because a lot of people just they might be interested in it, but they don't have time to sit down with the long documentation you might have. So next slide. And then another angle on the project management part of this is to mark your calendar for continued follow-up. Sometimes I have a tendency to create something and then throw it out there and then think, oh, it's done, it's great, everybody's gonna love it. But you have to, everyone has to mark their calendar to make sure that they're going to come back to it and keep thinking of different ways to approach it. Like, is there an organization that hasn't heard about this yet? Can I promote this to my departmental networks? Is there somebody new in the department, has a chair change, is a new professor, did I read an article about a new person coming in doing something? So you just keep working it, and then working it I would say outside your professional network too. I have a meetup group, and I've been promoting this map to my meetup group as well. I'm not afraid to request official marketing coverage. A lot of newspapers and marketing places, they're looking for stories, and so if you keep asking them, hey, do you want to promote this, do you want to promote this, they'll eventually come around and be interested. So right now we have University of Washington marketing and Continuum College marketing working on some pieces for this. And then of course, be open to change and improvement, because anytime you're asking for feedback or getting students involved or doing anything, you just need to know that everything needs to be dynamic and go with the flow and see what happens. And that's part of that long-term perspective. There may be a point where everybody already knows what forest bathing is, and it's just so obvious that we don't need it anymore. So that wouldn't that be great? So anyway, that's the long-term perspective. And next slide. So there's my email address, and there's a link to the maps, but I'm not sure if it works. So I'm going to put it in the chat. Oops. Wait a minute, I gotta go grab it. I'll put it in the chat, but we can open it to questions.
We are going to proceed now with Amber Garrard. Did I say that right, Amber?
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Amber Garrard. I work in the Yale Office of Sustainability as the Associate Director there. And I convene the New Haven Nature and Health Initiative, which is Yale's Campus RX program, but we also work with the local community and some of our community partners there. So I'm really excited just to share a little bit about that. And if you could go to the next slide, please. So just a couple of questions that I use to guide this work. It's just kind of thinking about community and who our community is, what is it that they need, and how can we support that. The next slide covers how I think about our campus community. So this is obviously with our campus HRX program, a huge part of what we focus on. We think a lot about our students and kind of have to differentiate between thinking about our undergraduate students and our graduate students to find that the ways to reach them, as well as the things that they are concerned about and some of their lifestyle choices, they tend to come from very different places. So we have actually engaged wellness professionals that work directly with the students and have partnered with them on our outreach programming. And we try to make it as simple as possible for the students, especially in the last year. We've heard from the wellness professionals that our students are really suffering from high levels of anxiety and stress. Yale students always suffer from those things, but it's been particularly poignant the last year. So we've tried to just come up with really simple ways that we can remind them of the benefits of spending time in nature and to encourage them to take a few minutes and get outside. So whether that's putting together a calendar, encouraging them to look for different student interest groups that are already doing programming, our yoga groups do meditation sessions and different yoga sessions in our botanical gardens, encouraging them to get involved with local green space groups, things of that nature have worked particularly well. We think a lot about our employees too, and how we can reach them as a demographic. Our employee wellness program has really fabulous resources on all kinds of programs to actually get employees out, leading walks around town, leading nature immersion meditation sessions, things of that nature. But what we've found is that many staff members don't feel like they can take time out of their workday to participate in these programs, even though they're free and encouraged. So we teamed up with our human resources department last year to actually offer a workshop for managers, and did a session for them to talk about how spending time in nature could actually help boost their team's performance as individuals and also as groups. We actually did a session similar to the reflection session we all did earlier today with our managers, and just gave them some simple tools for how to actually bring this into the workplace through walking meetings, outdoor meetings, things of that nature that have been particularly well received. And even though we rolled out a lot of these resources pre-COVID, we found that as COVID kind of really started taking over the limelight last year, our COVID coordinator, which sends out weekly emails to the entire Yale campus community, actually used some of these resources that we had pulled together to suggest that they be used more broadly in terms of coping with the stresses and all of the things we're dealing with COVID. So if you go to the next slide, we also try to engage our research community. Yale is obviously a huge research institution, so there's so many different kind of groups and facets that are thinking about different ways to connect to nature and help in different unique ways. But I think one of the most exciting right now, one of our partners is working on thinking about how can we connect financing specifically for land conservation organizations and connect that to healthcare providers and maybe even to connected to insurance, so that we can bring more and strengthen those ties between our clinical community and also land conservation community. So we've got students who are supporting our effort, acting as interns for the various components of our initiative, but also looking for ways to engage in classes that are taught and through our school of management, through our school of the environment, as well as our medical school and public health school. The next slide talks a little bit about some of our clinical partners. So when we started the New Haven Nature and Health Initiative, actually the majority of the members of the group came from the healthcare profession. So many of the faculty at the School of Medicine are also practicing clinicians at a local hospital or as part of the Yale New Haven health system, and are really interested in how do we bring the connection between nature and health more broadly out to both the healthcare providers and also to patients. We also have really active members to some of the community health centers that are in New Haven, and we've been recently joined by some social workers who are part of the special education programming that we offer in the city. So it's been really wonderful to partner with these folks who are really helping to get the word out to other healthcare providers. So we're trying to combine some of the resources that we develop on campus, see how they can be shared with others to encourage more clinicians to prescribe time in nature to their patients. Many of the folks involved in this are pediatricians and working specifically on issues of childhood obesity, the stress and anxiety in families. So we're trying to think a lot about what resources we can help to facilitate and make available to those folks. And park equity is one of the things that comes up over and over again around kind of these bigger systemic issues that we want to be thinking about addressing. The next slide just wanted to point to some of the things that we've tried to do to support these various partners. So we had some of our student interns, for example, help by adding green spaces across New Haven and also across the Yale campus to the Park RX America platform, which is what many of our clinical partners like to use for prescribing. We're also thinking about, are there ways we can streamline this interface more directly into the electronic medical record system so that it's easier for clinicians to use. And we're also working with our local nonprofits to think about how can we better kind of be a support network. So even though New Haven has a wonderful park score in terms of access to parks, what we find is that the quality of these parks is really differs depending on what community you're from, what neighborhood you're from, and how much access do folks have to transportation, safety, security concerns, housing and affordability. So we're trying to start a lot of these conversations. How can we kind of bring various components of our community together to really grapple with this and chip away at some of these bigger issues? So finally, just at the last slide, I wanted to share that, I think what we're doing at Yale, we're thinking definitely about how can we bring nature and health programming to our students, but I think more importantly, we actually are thinking about how can we support our broader community with this effort around nature and health work. And for us, that's just by being a convening body and really trying to bring people together to have conversations, to share resources, and to kind of try to work on all of these things together. So my contact information is there. I'm happy to answer questions if there are any, or if anyone is interested in following up, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Amber. It looks like we have a minute. If anyone has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat or unmute yourself if you would like. In the meantime, I'd just like to say I'm so happy that you're actively addressing employees on campuses. I think that's also very important to build that nature connected community and culture, and that you're really thinking about park equity as well. And I also wanted to say I'm so impressed. All of us have been under a lot of extra stress and duress during COVID, but I'm so impressed that all these initiatives are still moving forward. So very, very impressed with that. Looks like we have one question. What kinds of resources for clinicians did you include? Cynthia Jones asks.
Thanks for that question. So we've created a box folder of shared resources that all members of our committee can have access to. So that includes research articles, information, but then we've also tried to help develop things like brochures that can be used either for clinician to clinician communication, or that they can pass out to families and communities, the community more broadly. Some of our members have been doing walk with the doc programs where they actually will take other clinicians or families out for walks in nature around the neighborhood so that the clinicians can actually kind of understand the community so that they can recommend where local green spaces are for people to spend time in, and things of that nature.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you all once again. It's great to be back. And I'm just so appreciative of the opportunity to share a bit of, I guess, my personal journey and how this is opening up into this nature and forest therapy practice. It's so exciting to hear so much being shared about forest bathing, mindfulness, meditation, all of these tools that we can use to bring to the center point of this work. And just for a little background, I served for 12 years with the U.S. Forest Service in the Conservation Education Program in both Texas and Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C. is where I served as the Partnerships Diversity and Inclusion Specialist. And this is where I found nature and forest therapy, actually listening to one of Dr. Kathy Wolf's presentations where she mentioned forest bathing. And I branched out looking, researching on my own more about this practice and thinking that I had been before as a nature girl throughout my life. And when I went on my first walk, I realized I've never done this before. I've never been brought so deeply into the space of nature connection. And so we're really working to weave this practice into diverse community engagement, focusing on diverse people, cultures, and then also into the urban and community forestry world, really focusing on forest health and that relationship to human health, and then stewardship and conservation. Next, please. So Shindenyoku, or forest bathing, again, really just wrapping yourself in the atmosphere of the forest or nature or wherever you are and whatever ecosystem that might be. Really, this was brought to bear under the Japanese government and their Department of Agriculture, essentially, in forests and fisheries. And so they started to bring people out onto their national public lands for healing, because they started to see so many of the chronic diseases that we are seeing now. And really, this practice is thought to be the most widespread nature-based activity that connects forests and human health, with a tremendous body of research around it. Next, please. And again, bathing in the atmosphere of the forest, opening our senses, really being present, wrapping ourselves in nature's healing embrace, but also the phytoncides, or the volatile chemicals that are emitted by trees, that really serve as the tree's immune system. If they're being attacked by either some insect or a fungi or any type of disease, they actually start to emit more phytoncides. And through a tremendous body of research, it's been found that these phytoncides, when we breathe them in and we're bathing in these phytoncides, we are actually increasing our own immune system, reducing our stress levels by reducing our cortisol levels, increasing natural killer cells, and overall just increasing our own immune function. So I venture to say there's a lot left there to learn through research. So I'm so excited to see all of these researchers on our call right now. And next, please. And I would just say that I truly feel, and I believe I had the opportunity as the first Forest Service employee to be supported in becoming an Association of Nature and Forest Therapy certified guide through an intensive training. The training is 6 months in length, plus now an additional 4-day in-person immersion training. I went through the practice or the training in 2018, and it's really an evidence-based integrated wellness practice that we now know benefits people, of course, with all this research, but we're also seeing these benefits to nature and reciprocity, or giving back and stewardship. Next, please. And so this is really, it's all interconnected: physical, psychological, and ecological, building relationship with the natural world, or what we often call the more than human world. Next, please. And as we experienced just a while ago, again, that was just a taste of the forest therapy aspect. Many might call it forest bathing, again, connecting to those initial 5 senses, which we know opens us up to over 22, and some are saying more, senses of being self-aware, that creativity, intuition. We went to the imaginal sense. So again, this isn't a naturalist walk or a hike even. It's not from getting here to there. It's just about being present. Next, please. And as guides, we offer invitations, and these invitations, we say, come from the natural world around us. Although we do use a series of standard sequence of invitations that bring people into more depths of nature connection. We often call it liminal space, where you actually forget about time. You become so connected to what is around you instead of thinking, or you begin feeling and become embodied. And we give these invitations that is an invitation. It is whatever is right for you, the forest or the natural world calls you in for that healing. Next, please. Often there's quiet sitting or wandering, as I mentioned earlier, the water who is in motion, slowing down to the rhythm of the natural world around you. Often this takes, it's almost a panic situation for some people. They have a really hard time moving into that second invitation. Once they get through that, it becomes like a different experience. Next, please. And we often say that, and many of our invitations are about befriending the natural world around us. We often have people that come back into the circle, as we shared earlier in circle, which is a really important component. We hear a lot of this friendship that occurs. Next, please. And again, sharing and being witnessed is a key component of the nature and forest therapy practice that may be different from a forest bathing experience. This was developed by Amos Clifford, who is the founder of the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy. And often we will grab something from the land like this, like a nature microphone or a sharing piece. And once we are being witnessed as the person that is sharing with the sharing piece, and when you pass it, then you become the person witnessing others. And so the entire circle is building this cultural repair. And oftentimes people are feeling very disconnected from people and the land, and this brings us together. So cultural repair arises through nature connection. Next, please. We often say, this is our motto, so to speak, that the forest is the therapist, the guide opens the doors. So we are not therapists. There are many individuals who are therapists of some kind who become trained, and then they are therapists. But in general, the practice is to train as a guide who you can lead others into this space. Next, please. And there are many guides around the world. There are now about 1,800 certified guides, approximately 900 here in the US, about 300 in Canada, and then throughout 6 continents and so many different languages. Next, please, and cultures. And I'll mention that I had the great honor of hosting with another 2 forest therapy guides, Dr. Don Rakow, Dr. Kathy Wolf, Dr. Naomi Sachs, Florence Williams, many others, who joined in a remote nature and forest therapy session. This started, of course, upon the onset of COVID. It was never even thought of prior. Well, it was by my former supervisor, but ANFT did not want to bring it forward. Now it has been brought forward, and it is a powerful experience. It really does connect people wherever they are. We had 10 states, 4 countries, and 4 provinces all on one connect. And so people were noticing their nature connection around other countries. So I mentioned this because this is a wonderful practice to bring people into nearby nature connection. It's live, it's not recorded. And so people are pulsing out on their invitations, they come back and they share. You can use either like earbuds, you don't even have to be on screen. Some people don't want to be on screen, others do. Others want to share their elation, their connections with the more than human world. And so it's really uniting people through this nature experience. We have a body of diverse ANFT certified guides who can serve diverse participants in a variety of languages. We have a number of people who are now going through trainings in Spanish and other languages. And this is really supporting the wellness of people and the land and creating a relationship. You find that people create relationship with themselves, with others in the circle, and with the land, the natural world. And we'll go to next, please. And so what are some ways that we might bring this practice to our campuses? I would offer to in-person or remote nature and forest therapy sessions or online. Again, these aren't recorded. Some are recording, but this is a completely different type of practice. Weave it into landscape architecture design, as we heard from some of the earlier presentations, integrated into new student orientation. What a way to really connect people at your campus. And then training students, school nurses. Dr. Robert Zara is a trained guide, and he's now bringing this practice to healthcare providers. We just guided some nature and forest therapy guides, guided some of the providers in Missouri, and he's looking at doing this around the nation and the world. And this can support students, faculty, admin, weaving in this type of programming into your diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and campus cultural centers, and then engaging in research-related efforts. So yay, research. Thanks so much for mentioning that earlier, because it really does bring to bear. I was just at the SHIFT conference. Dr. Naomi Sachs was there sharing about her research in gardening and in these nature-based connections, and then establishing certified nature and forest therapy trails. And we can help you and support you in that. We're seeing an expansion of nature and forest therapy trails throughout the world. ANFT holds one of those programs, and there are many throughout Japan, South Korea, and other places that we can network in these trail systems. Next, please. And so if you're interested, you can take a picture of the QR code and go here for more information about how to become a certified nature and forest therapy guide with the ANFT. And there are many, this is not the only one. This is the one under which I train. And I had a personal and professional transformation leaving the Forest Service to really pursue this work. And I work to really recruit young people and people from diverse communities, because I really believe this practice needs to be brought into the communities among the people that are in those communities. And it's also creating a beautiful career pathway that I believe will become a part of our educational system in the future. So kudos to all of those who are bringing these nature-based classes, nature RX classes to your programs. Next, please. And again, if you're interested in the ANFT Certified Forest Therapy Trail Certification Program, there's more there with the QR code. And this is, again, another wonderful way to, I know that there are other trail systems, so great to hear Dr. Kathy Wolf is involved in the one at UW. And this is yet maybe another level in which you might be able to weave this type of programming into your space and have another level of certification on your Nature RX campus. And next, please. So I'll just ask, how do you envision ways in which you can weave this practice of nature and forest therapy into your campus community? And again, I'm so excited to see that this is already happening, but again, I will promote and just really plant that seed of this is a future, I would say, a career pathway. And although I left the Forest Service, I'm still working very closely with the Forest Service from the outside in, and they are using this remote nature and forest therapy practice to support their employees' resilience, their, just as we're talking about with faculty, staff, admin, as well as students on these campuses. And so I highly recommend this practice of in the remote fashion, but of course in the in-person fashion as well. And with that, just extending my gratitude to all of you who are bringing this work forward and who are expanding it. We can see such expansion.
As Dorothy said, my name is Shane Tedder. I serve as the campus sustainability officer, and so connective tissue in a lot of ways. And it's my pleasure to present on 4 programs today. We are a land grant public institution in Lexington, Kentucky with 30,000 students, a community about 50,000 because our healthcare and professional colleges are contiguous with our main undergraduate campus. The 4 programs I want to highlight today, one comes directly out of UK Healthcare, the Center for Integrative Medicine, that flows into a grant-funded project that I'll highlight, a course that was taught this summer, and then some self-guided tree walks that a community of practice developed on our campus. So to kick off this healthcare one, I want to show about a minute of a video here and hope that it works. And let's see.
How would you feel if the next time you saw your doctor, he or she said, "I want you to walk outside every day"? Hi, I'm Dr. Connie Jennings. I've been here in internal medicine at UK for over 30 years. And for the last several years, I've had the privilege of directing our integrative medicine clinic. I'm serious about that question. Walking outdoors is one of the best prescriptions your doctor can give you, because many of us are suffering from NDD. NDD is nature deficit disorder. Many days, we spend 80 to 90% of our day inside. That means conditioned air and artificial light. If we were to become accustomed to thinking of nature as medicine, we might find that a walk in the woods could sometimes pay off more than a bottle of pills.
I want that to advance. There we go. So that's Dr. Connie Jennings. She leads integrative medicine, but our commitment to nature as medicine doesn't stop there, even though she's high up in the administration. This quote came from our Executive Vice President for Health Affairs in support of the project that I'll detail next. And I'm not going to read it, but hopefully you've had time to see it. The photo that's shown in the background there is the view from a patient room in the patient tower of our hospital. And so looking down, that's green roof all the way down to the street. And so from that patient tower, you look out not on tar or black roof, but on green space, because we're committed to the idea that access to that improves healing and health. The program that was born out of the commitment was this concept of diverse landscape for nature RX on the medical campus. And it's a challenge grant program, which is one of our flagship sustainability programs where we provide funding to interdisciplinary teams to tackle challenges. I'm not going to go all the way through this team, but I encourage you to look just at the departments represented by the team members here and think about the intersectionality that having that level of diversity in terms of academic discipline and research backgrounds brings to this type of project. It just got started earlier this summer, but they kicked off with a really immersive week, bringing together landscape architects and interior designs to explore this idea of diverse landscapes for nature RX. It was a 5-day immersion that resulted in the student teams presenting concepts to a board of experts about what they would do with, I think they had 6 sites identified around the healthcare campus, and gave them some design criteria as well as some programmatic outcomes that were kind of the strategic goal. And these teams of undergrads from 2 different disciplines developed these concepts, and those concepts will become informative to the work of the overall team as they look to work with our facilities management group to actually implement some of these changes. The buy-in that we have from top level administration as well as our operational executives is strong enough that I have no doubt that we'll end up implementing some of this. So that's exciting work. 2 or 3 slides back, there's a QR code that links to more info. I think everybody will have access to the slide deck. And so I've kind of hidden those little Easter eggs in here on the slides to make it easy to navigate back to some of these programs. The second program I want to highlight, or I guess third, was a course that we taught last year. It was a special travel course. This is actually the lead faculty member on the course and the lead staff member on the course tumbling down some sand dunes. And when she sent me the photos that highlighted it, I thought that was a perfect one because that level of play and getting sand absolutely everywhere, to me, in a lot of ways, epitomizes the foundation of what we're getting out here. That you get out in it, you get dirty in it, and the outcomes of that are maybe not always what you would expect, but often more than we could hope for. And so she took a team of 5 students on a 2-week trip. And the student testimonials were incredible. It's obviously a privilege to get to do a course like this because of the economics behind a travel course. But I think a lot of the lessons learned can be applied in the daily on the campus. And that is where I'll conclude with my highlights in this quick 7-minute blitz, is that we have a team called the Urban Forest Initiative that's made up of community nonprofits, private practitioners, and university faculty, all trying to elevate the profile of our urban forest and highlight the myriad of benefits that they bring. The tree walks are self-guided, and they're meditative and self-care focused in terms of the narration that's there, but they use the campus as the physical background for that. And so this one that I have highlighted picks out 3 trees that happen to be in the yard of our president's house, and over the course of about 8 minutes walks the guest through each of those trees and their ecology and their biology, and to some degree the human history of how they got there. And so the field elm in the center is the largest tree on our campus, and we highlight that. But then, you know, you're encouraged to look at them and lean against them and feel that strength and a lot of those other elements. And then there's just good self-care meditation built into it. So those are 4 examples of things happening on our campus that I'm incredibly excited to support and to share with you today. And I think we've got a couple minutes for questions.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started, and thank you for having me. So my name is Bryan Thompson-Nowak, as Dorothy just said. I'm from the Mars Arboretum, which is a part of the University of Pennsylvania. I'm not going to be quite as bold and go for 4 programs. I'm just going to do 1. So we have a little over a decade now of doing a freshman class tree planting program. So it's been a great tradition that we started before my time. It's a donor and alumni came to us with this idea, and we thought it was great, between the Mars Arboretum himself and the University of Pennsylvania. So as you can see here, it's with the students are always happy, the freshmen and the tree and the mascot and everything. It's a great photo op, and it's a great time to get freshmen like really involved in a part of the natural life in trees right in the first semester. So you can go on to the next slide, please. So like it says here, it all starts with 3 trees and a vote. Even I will say, I work on this. I start organizing this, I think, in June, prior to the freshmen even getting here. So it starts well before the 3 trees and a vote. I have to organize. We're a big university with a big facilities department and lots of different facilities departments. So one team handles the hole digging, another team handles the plaque arranging, another team actually handles the planting. So you can't go away from that schedule. That's how it has to be here. But we start with the students. We work with the university landscape architect to have the location decided ahead of time, and they give us a list of trees that would work well in that site. And then the one thing we always make sure we do every year is to make sure those trees are actually available in the trade. We made that mistake once, that we let students vote on a tree that didn't exist, and they chose it, of course, and it was hard to find. So we make sure these trees are available in the trade and at the size and the shape that we want. And once they vote on a tree, which happens right after the incoming freshman class president is elected in early October. So this all happens pretty quickly. So early October, the freshman class president's elected based on the survey, and we have to have this voted on and ready by homecoming, which is the first weekend in Saturday. So it moves pretty quick once they get here. So you can move on to the next slide. And as you can see, we do it up pretty good. This is homecoming at Penn. So there's a football game early in the afternoon, and this freshman class tree has been brought right into the homecoming tradition. So students are only here on campus, the freshmen, just for a little over a month. And this tree is front and center, one of the first things they can vote on as a freshman class. And they'll have it, and the whole intention of this being the freshman class trees, they have it for their time as a freshman all the way through the time they graduate as a senior. And if they come back for homecoming, they can still see their tree growing. So this is, we always have a nice lineup of speakers. This is our Arboretum Executive Director, Bill Kalina. This is actually his first time doing this. He came to us about 2 years ago, and his son was a freshman at Penn that year. So we had a nice special talk about his son actually being there, and then the tree was there for his class. So we have our Director Bill, and the next slide is actually our funder. So this is another Bill. This is Bill Hones. He lives in Florida, but he comes up every year. And what's really great is this engages alumni. So he comes up every year for the homecoming, but mostly he loves engaging with students. So he loves engaging with students. He loves the whole idea of the trees and the trees growing as students grow at Penn and grow on beyond Penn. And this, he actually endowed us for life, because he sees these trees growing for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, these students having connections with these trees. And next slide, please. And we also get the freshman class president. So the freshman class president gets to share a few words about their class. This is very early on in their time, obviously, but what it means to them in their class. So it gets them invested in these trees. We've had stories of over the years of different homecomings, the freshman class or the class officers meet their trees. They actually take a liking to their trees, and they feel invested in their trees. And I've had many students with the plaque is missing, the tree is damaged, they'll email facilities for me and say, what's wrong with the tree? Is it dying? The plaque is missing. So they definitely take notice of their trees, and you know, and they like them. So it's really impressive how well this has worked. Next slide, please. So this also creates some really great photo opportunities. Everything, I feel like everything these days needs to be, not everything, but needs to be social media ready, but it creates a lot of great opportunities for that freshman class. We probably stay there for a good 30 minutes or an hour after the dedication with our chrome shovels, and the freshmen just come by and they want selfies with the tree. They want selfies, you know, adding mulch to the trees. So we must have, you know, 50 or 100 kids come by over that hour. They want selfies with it. They want to have the plaque and the image with the shovels and the tree. And they always ask questions about the tree. What type is it? And, you know, they don't always know exactly what they chose, but they know they chose it. So it's a great opportunity for them to see the tree. And then we put a plaque in the ground. As you can see, I have a sticker there. The plaque takes a long time to make, so I put a sticker there for the dedication, but eventually they all get a big brass plaque that gets put in the ground so they can always find it and know it's for their class. And next slide, please. And then, and like many of your campuses, our campus is a campus arboretum, so it's I believe it's a level 2 arboretum. So all the trees are mapped, identified, and tagged. So we actually add this to the class tree tours. So we can do tours. If any of you also have BG map and BG base or something similar, I'm sure you do likewise. We add this to our class tree tour, and you can see all the trees, all the class trees going back to 2010. The number of votes that they got, who the class president was, the type of tree that it is, all the information around it, so they can always, if you forget where your tree is or you wonder where a certain class tree is, you can always find it and it'll go right to that. And all of our class trees over the past 10 years have all been very centralized. It's our main library and campus thoroughfare that they've all been, as you can see here, in a very small window. So you can pretty much get to all the class trees within just a few minute walk. And then this is, like I said, it's put on Penn Plant Explorer, so they can always find it. And we add this usually once the tree is in the ground, we add on there and we just add more and more. So I think I'm right about a time at 7 minutes. I'll stop there. I think next slide, I'm not sure if I have a next slide. There you go. So thank you. There's my email if you have questions about how we did this, how we got started, and the mechanics on it. We also have the Penn Plant Explorer website if you want to see our trees and how they're spread out. And also there's the Mars Arboretum link. So, and unfortunately, like a lot of you, we're not on campus, we're 13 miles off campus. So I'm not on Penn's campus. I coordinate this from a little bit farther away. So we always try and get the students out here to the Arboretum as much as possible. But yeah, so that is all I have for everyone. And I'll see if we have any questions.
Thank you, Bryan. I just absolutely love this program. It's
thank you.
seemingly simple, but it's so powerful, and you can see how, you know, it really connects the students to the landscape and to the nature. We have a question from Tamberly. Tamberly, this is a nice juicy question. I'm wondering if you would unmute yourself and ask it yourself.
Sure, certainly. Thank you, Dorothy. Wow, what beautiful program, Bryan. Thank you so much for sharing this and planting the seed for other campuses. But I'm wondering, this has been kind of a conversation among the community around nature and forest therapy and the forest communities, you know, that we're serving. But I wonder if you've done any like tree planting and then had any nature and forest therapy conducted around the planting so that people have a more sensory connection to them, and then having these like post-planting events where people could come back out and do this nature and forest therapy practice, and then maybe weaving in any kind of opportunities for education around forest health, because we know forest health issues are just rampant, and there's a direct relationship between forest health and human health. So when trees are sick and die, then we do too. So I'm just wondering if you have anything going on around that.
Yes, I would say not yet. On the day, this is homecoming, so there's usually like the marching band is going past, and there's speakers and there's bands. So on the day of, I'm not sure if forest bathing would work out very well to connect, but we're planning our Nature RX program was about, and another programs with this was about to launch in the spring of 20. So as you can imagine, everything got put on pause a little bit. So we're just about ready to relaunch all these ideas and all these things. And I think there are some great ideas of ways to bring students back, to reconnect with these trees. That's not yet, but I love the idea, and I think it's something we can put into the idea for it to definitely look at. But I think a way to get these kids connected with the trees, with the campus arboretum and all the places around Penn is essential as we move forward.
So I'll turn my video on. Hello. You can go to the next slide if you don't mind. So my name is Sarah Wallace. This is going to be an abridged presentation for my thesis, which I did last year. I graduated from University of Maryland with a master's in landscape architecture in August. So this is my design for NatureRx on the University of Maryland campus. Sorry, I haven't done a presentation in a while. Could you go to the next slide, please? So I use Amos Clifford's book, Your Guide to Forest Bathing, as a basis and kind of like a guide to design my spaces on campus. If you haven't read it, it's really good. It explains really well on how to forest bathe. Next slide, please. At University of Maryland, there is some programming for NatureRx. Dr. Roberts started it a few years ago in 2018. Next slide, please. So this is a map of University of Maryland's campus. UMD partnered with ParkRx America to find sites on campus and are deemed NatureRx spaces. So I went to all of them, checked them out, and created a classification for each one, loosely based on like the amount of trees versus like how much sidewalk and concrete you're surrounded by, and like noise. So we can tell there's a lot more urban than there are natural spaces. And I just want to draw your attention to that purple kind of shape up at the top. That is the site that I use for my design. Next slide, please. So campuses are just riddled with lots of students with anxieties and stresses. I want to take those issues and overlap them with a design solution, like sitting areas and trail systems. So hopefully the outcome would be less stress, more relaxation, and more exercise and movement from students. Next slide, please. So this is a zoomed in to the site that I chose. It's just highlighting the dorms surrounding it, different points of entry. There are two NatureRx sites fairly close to it. Next slide, please. Just another slide showing the circulation around the site. You can see at the left, there's a highway, so that creates a lot of noise. There's traffic kind of circulating around and some foot traffic from students getting over to the garage, to dorms, and to the main campus. Next slide, please. So here's the site. I'm not going to talk about each one. The Nature Hangout, Mindful Meditation, and Sensory Pergola. These are the spaces that I chose to create a design. I also designed a trail system throughout. It's a little light, you can kind of see it over where it says NatureRx. So everything's connected to get to each space and goes within this wooded area. Next slide, please. It's okay. These are some of the design elements that I wanted to incorporate. Going back to Amos Clifford's book, having signage and like an entryway, so students are drawn in and there's a threshold for you to actually cross over to get to the invitations. I think that would be imperative to have like a map, the signage at the left. I did a sketch of having a map and maybe on the right side saying like who, what, why, where of NatureRx or forest bathing. The center panels, I designed them as if they could maybe have a question about like to a student, potential student, are you feeling anxious? You could flip it over and go, and it would have the answer of going and doing a certain invitation and where you would be able to do that. Next slide, please. More design elements. Seating, I think you need to be comfortable. So stay a little bit longer in nature, and having some type of like kind of artistic element to intrigue students into the spaces would be helpful. Next slide. This is the nature hangout right behind one of the large dormitories on campus. So this is about, I don't know, maybe like 50 feet off of the patio behind this dormitory. So there's an entryway, the kind of gray circle below those triangles, and those triangles would be stationary hammocks, and then moving along the trail, there would be posts for students to bring their own hammocks, and then you can just continue on the trail to another space. Oh, next slide. So this is a section elevation cutting through the entry patio, through the stationary hammocks, a seat wall. If you don't want a hammock, if you don't have a hammock, you could just sit on the wall, and showing the posts where you could hang your own hammock. Next slide, please. This is a sketch I did looking back towards the building of what it maybe potentially could look like. Next slide. This is the sensory pergola site plan over at the other western end of the site. Same kind of thing, entryway, threshold to the site, meandering trails down to the spaces to forest bathe, to sit and relax and reflect. Next slide, please. This is a section elevation through all of those spaces from the Wellness Way, the one road going through the forested area and a stream, over to the pergola and archway, which then leads to more trailways and into other spaces. And I believe that might be my last slide. Oh, no, just a perspective drawing of just what the entry would look like with signage and seating. Next slide. And another perspective drawing of pergola and looking over the archways. Well, I think I kept it pretty short. Oops. And I just put a link up there if you want to read my thesis. It's a lot longer. It's online at the University of Maryland thesis database, I guess you'd call it.
Thank you, Sarah. Maybe you could put the link in the chat?
Oh yeah, sure.
To read it. Wonderful work that you've done. Thank you. We have a minute for any questions for Sarah. Stacy says she wants to read it, so that's good. It's wonderful when someone else outside your committee, right, reads your.
Yeah, that wants to.
Sarah, I have a question. This is Don Rakow. How supportive is the administration of implementing this project, either in terms of their pronouncements or, more importantly, funding?
That is a great question. I feel like that came up during my dissertation. I think from what I know from last year, there are other programs going on that I didn't even get into that are written out in my thesis, like Naomi, help me out.
The agroecology corridor.
Yeah, thank you, the ecology corridor, potential like foraging and different walks throughout the campus. University of Maryland campus is an arboretum. All of the trees are labeled. There's, you can find it on their website and find each tree. I think eventually, if there was enough backing, it could actually be developed and designed out to fruition, but I'm not sure at this moment it could happen.
Yeah, just to add to that, this is Naomi Sachs. I was Sarah's thesis advisor, and There is a group that's working on the agroecology corridor, as well as campus wellness way or something like that. Maybe Dr. Roberts can chime in. That I haven't heard anything about in about 6 months, but I think people are slowly going towards the agroecology corridor. It's a lot of different people working on it. One thing that the dean and others were very intrigued about Sarah's work was the possibility of doing things in phases. So, maybe everything didn't have to happen at once, but the trail could start, or one of the hammocking area. And then as funding came along, other elements could be added. So Sarah, your site, part of the reason that you chose it is it really is in such a wild nature rich place, which most of UMD doesn't have.
Yeah, it's pretty much surrounded by highways and heavy trafficked routes. So
yeah. Oh, Injalin says, I live in the area and I think there's potential for community engagement. Wow, that's cool.
That would be nice.
We should connect. That would be great.
And I wonder, Naomi and Sarah, are there any local guides who are actually guiding on that trail and using it kind of as a model for a self-guided and in-person kind of dual model?
Well, as far as I know, there isn't really a trail where like I was showing a trail that would have to be like cut back and leveled out and everything. But to answer, I guess, your first question, there are local guides in the area. I did go on I went on 2 different forest bathing excursions, one at the Arboretum, which was at night at the full moon. And then I did one like up near where I live, which is like an hour away north in Ellicott City. So there are ANFT guides around.
So thank you so much, Dr. Ibes, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Margot. I'm a senior here at William & Mary studying government and environmental policy. This is my 3rd semester actually with Dr. Ibes in the Parks and Ecotherapy Research Lab, where I serve as the outreach and communications coordinator. Some of my duties include sending out a bi-weekly newsletter of the lab's activities, planning collaborative ecotherapy events with various groups on campus, and expanding Pearl's social sphere in general to get the word out about the mental and physical benefits of nature engagement. So I joined the lab after taking the Science and Experience of Ecotherapy course with Dr. Ibes that we all know and love in the spring of 2020, which, as you all know, was the semester that COVID hit. And regardless of the disruptive transition to online classes, ecotherapy became my favorite class in college ever and remains so to this day, to the extent that I've begun exploring some formal ecotherapy training options for myself outside of William & Mary. When combined together, Pearl and ecotherapy had a profound impact on my life in 3 major ways that I wanted to share with you today. So first of all, I started prioritizing time around nature. Growing up in a family of gardeners had made me conscious of the fact that I always felt happier, healthier, and just overall better after spending quality time outdoors. But it wasn't 2 years ago that I realized how much research there was about the therapeutic benefits of engaging with nature. The concept of forest bathing, for example, taught me how to lower my heart rate and nervous activity from simple walks in the woods. I learned that there was a reason that I felt calmer around all of my houseplants. There's a lot of them, since nearby greenery improves mood and boosts performance. And then most importantly, I am never gonna forget how happy and excited and content I felt after like playing in the mud and creating eco art from stones and twigs here on campus, along with my classmates and Dr. Ibes during a rainy class. This was right before COVID. And nature play has since been my favorite form of ecotherapy. Then second, I developed career and life skills from this lab and ecotherapy class. After the course and spending a year with Pearl, I began exploring potential career paths that tied in with parks management. So this summer, I was very grateful to have received an internship with the Fairfax County Park Authority at Green Spring Gardens in Northern Virginia. I hope some of you have been there. It's a really beautiful place where I learned more about environmental governance, park management, and community coordination at a local level, which is what I was really interested in and still am interested in. I'm confident that the prerequisite skills and knowledge I gained through the work I did with Pearl and Dr. Ibes were what helped me excel in the tasks I was assigned by my supervisors at Green Spring Gardens. And then lastly, I felt self-fulfillment and optimism, and this is perhaps the most near and dear topic in my life of ecotherapy. I like to think that direct results are the most telling aspect of practicing nature engagement. I know that my peers at Pearl have indicated satisfaction with the work they are doing to promote green spaces, as they felt they were positively contributing to the school and community that they loved so much. I too felt much happier and fulfilled knowing that the work we're doing promotes a positive atmosphere on campus. And it's what keeps me motivated both in my studies and in my work with Pearl. To quote a student who worded the feeling well, "It has given me more optimism that environmental and social progress can be made starting with very small steps like getting people outside more often." So now I say with the utmost confidence that my journey with Pearl and ecotherapy in general has had a profound impact on every aspect of my life. I'm just as confident that it can have such an equally immense effect on anyone who's open to the endless benefits of nature engagement. Thanks so much for listening to my little blurb. I actually have class that started 10 minutes ago, so I should head out soon, but I can stick around, excuse me, for a couple minutes to see if anybody has any questions. And I can also enter my email in the chat in case anybody wanted to email me afterwards. Thank you.
Today, for this particular session 4, I wanted to kind of talk about green space equity in yesterday's world and in today's world of COVID. And if we go to the next slide, I'm not sure if it's been set up, but I was hoping to do some polls. And the first question is to ask everyone, do you have access to nature or green space within a 10-minute walk? If you don't have the poll, let's just kind of make do with, hopefully everyone has had maybe the reactions on the bottom panel. So you can put a yes or a no. And I see a couple thumbs up, yeses. I see, okay. So far I see a lot of yeses. Okay, well, that's good to see. So next slide, please. Unfortunately, nearly half of us are not in that yes category. I actually went and looked up my very specific area, and it says I currently live in Silver Spring until October 31st, and I'll no longer be in this area. But it says that 95% of people where I live currently are within a 10-minute walk, and a lot of people, nearly half, are not like that. And this is based on scores from the Trust for Public Land. And here's an example of the top 10 cities, which is funny because 2 of them are like in my area. And then you see the top or the bottom 5 cities in terms of the scores. And these scores are based on access, the investment of the park, the amenities of the park, the acreage, and they just recently added in a component of this index to include equity. And so what we've seen is that over across the board, nearly half of Americans do not have it. But then when you look at it in terms of different demographics, you see even more disparities. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So we see that in neighborhoods that are the wealthiest, the widest, those are the neighborhoods that tend to have the best parks, the largest parks, the most well-kept parks. I saw this article that came out in USA Today in August of 2020. And it was a woman who was interviewed. She lives in South Chattanooga, Tennessee. And basically, she lives in an apartment complex, and her park is right next door, but it's shoehorned to like a cellulose plant that actually processes used grease and lard into animal feed. So I can't even imagine what the noxious odors are. But in any case, it's a very small park. But only about 4 miles away, if you see the photo on the bottom, you see this very kind of palatial park. It has tree canopy. I mean, you can just see it. It's very nice looking. And this park is only 4 miles away on the other side of the Tennessee River. And so basically in the article, Rakow was saying, you know, are we not supposed to be there to these other parks? Why there's more investment into these other parks that are so close by, but not in my neighborhood? And basically the differences, one significant difference is where Rakow lives. She lives in a neighborhood that's 95% African-American, but the Coolidge Park in the photo, it's bookended by predominantly white neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So in addition to the issues of access, you know, there's this whole ideal of privilege with nature. This quote, systemic racism doesn't stop at the park gates. I love this quote. It was stated by Dr. Carolyn Finney, who is a cultural geographer. And she's pretty much argued in work that she's done in her book, Black Bodies, White Faces, or White Faces. She's argued that, you know, the African-American presence in the great outdoors was removed by the racial bias in the Wilderness Act, and that there was just a general lack of attention for Black outdoor spaces. And then what we saw, thank you, white spaces. What we saw in the summer of 2020 was a perfect example of that with Christian Cooper. That incident highlighted the issues of structural racism and the exclusion and the white privilege, and how all of these intersect with nature connectedness and nature equity. Next slide, please. So same kind of situation. We can just use your thumbs up or thumbs down. This question is, do you know anyone who has personally died from COVID-19? I see one thumbs up, one thumbs down, 3 more yeses, another yes and no. So it's about, it seemed about half and half. Okay. And if we go to the next slide, please. The reason why that question brought up, partly because yes, this is part of the presentation, but I was, just as a side note, I was talking to a colleague, and this colleague is of European descent. And we were just talking, this is not way back, but it was like earlier in the pandemic, probably last August. Anyhow, we were talking, I was telling her how many people I had already lost because of COVID. And she was very surprised, not surprised, like, oh, not surprised, but like, really like, you know, someone personally, that kind of surprise. And it just got me thinking, and I was like, well, as a person of color, it's just almost inevitable that I'm going to know someone or know someone who knows someone because of these disparities that we see. So if you look at this figure right here, which is this data from the beginning of the pandemic to December of last year, and you see that basically in terms of age-adjusted COVID mortality rates for all folks of color, except for Asian folks, there was a 2 to 3 times higher rate of mortality in compared to white folks. And then if we go to the next slide, please. Now this data, it continues on from December until most recently March, kind of cut off because I won't get into the whole details of why, you know, we stopped collecting data based on race. But in any case, you see that some of the groups, there has been a slight attenuation, but in any case, the Pacific Islanders did go up in terms of the mortality rate, but all the other folks, there's a slight attenuation in terms of the mortality rates. But even still, there's still a disparity where we see that folks of color, again, with the exception of Asians, are nearly twice as likely to have died of COVID in comparison to white Americans. And then, next slide, please. This is data that I was able to obtain and put these graphs together as recent as this month. We see that there's still disparities. And we see that there's still disparities, across race and ethnicity. I was also able to see whether or not there's disparities in terms of vaccination rate, which I already thought there was. But clearly you can see, with the exception again of white Americans and Asian Americans, that there is a higher proportion of folks who have a mortality rate in reference to the proportion of their population. And then these disparities are even more stark in certain pockets of the United States. So if we go to the next slide, you can see how it's even more disparate in like areas, for example, in the Washington, D.C. area, where you see that almost doubling in terms of the mortality rate of African Americans in comparison to the proportion of their population percentage. And obviously you can see that, the vaccination rate is also disparate in terms of they exceed the rates of all the other groups except for African Americans. Okay, next slide, please. So this next poll question is, has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted your connection with nature? Again, we can do a yes, no, thumbs up. I was going to ask a little bit more detail, like has it impacted greatly? Yes. Impacted just a little bit? Yes. Or not at all. But you can just put thumbs up, thumbs down, yes or no, and we can just kind of go from there. So I see one, yes, it has. Yes. Oh, I'm seeing all yeses. Okay. So next slide, please. Pandemic, lockdown, and green space. I think during the height when we were all experiencing serious cabin fever, like I know I was experiencing cabin fever. Can we go back? They basically, during the height in July of 2020, basically CDC was actually telling us, go out to your park. It's the safest way. It's the safest way to go out, get some fresh air, and go to the one closest to your home. Some people followed that. Actually, a lot of people followed that. But what happened was these parks got overcrowded. And you can see here in August 22 that this USA Today showing the parks were closed because there was just too many people, which goes to a little bit what I was talking about before. So I still say yes, only about half of us have, or a little bit more than half of us have a park within a 10-minute walk. But those percentages vary significantly by state income and other demographics. And when I say this is that parks that serve a majority of people of color are half as big, and they serve nearly 5 times as many people per acre. So if you're in certain areas, it's very easy for those parks to get crowded. And so we saw that there was a significant disparity of green space and park access at the height of the pandemic. And I think it really just kind of elucidated the fact that we already had these disparities, but we weren't really paying attention to them as much. But when we got cabin fever and we couldn't go anywhere else but green space, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, what's going on? Next slide, please. So this whole ideal, we started to see it, other articles come out last July and last June about, this nature inequity. We've seen research which shown that, there's less tree canopy in areas that were redlined. And subsequently, those areas are much hotter. We saw a lot of that coming out when we were facing that heat kind of situation. I think that was late July, early August, when it was just a complete heat wave. And so we're seeing a lot of these inequities based on, or these nature gap in areas that are communities of color. And we do know that, I won't preach to the choir, that, there's an equity. I mean, there's a benefit to nature, but when there's a nature inequity, there subsequently will be health inequities as well. Next slide, please. And so going back to the whole idea of nature connection, many scholars, they've looked at health and wellness impacts to nature access. So, I'm going to keep emphasizing that. But the other key thing that some scholars have also emphasized is this nature connection, particularly among communities of color. And you've had researchers such as Kimberly Smith, who's a professor of political science. She's actually stated that the human relationship with nature is affected by the justice or injustice of their social surroundings. And I believe that in terms of currently and as well as historically. Other scholars have argued that slavery and other racial oppression has had a direct impact on African Americans' relationship and interaction with nature. And some of these policies have also impacted, not only our access, but our overall connection with nature. And again, speaking with, Carolyn Finney, she basically has emphasized this over and over in a lot of her research. Next slide, please. And so when we look at these images, in the absence of the signs, it looks like particularly this one in the lower left-hand corner, just all this grass. I just want to be a kid and roll in the grass, and just have fun. But we have to realize that despite the fact that how peaceful and beautiful these images, there was a very dark period that there was dark events that happened in these very spaces. Not that, oh, these spaces were, spared that darkness, where a lot of lynchings happened, in open spaces, happened in parks, happened on waterways. And so we can't forget the darkness that occurred in many of the spaces like this or other natural areas throughout the United States. Next slide, please. And so my point is that we need to talk about it. We can't just kind of sweep it under the rug. If we talk about it, then we can begin to address the barriers to nature connection and access for folks of color. And I emphasize specifically African Americans, but this is something that is, for all BIPOC. In my opinion. And this legacy of institutionalized exclusion of these spaces from these recreational areas or just other green spaces in general. And due to the years of discrimination, for many people, the experience of being outdoors can feel like an effort, more and like a fear that needs to be conquered for its own sake, as opposed to just something that could just be tranquil and beautiful. And so too often people of color face kind of like either underwelcoming or overwelcoming. And these are just also microaggressions. So you may have access, so you can go to these spaces, and I even experience these microaggressions. I'll have people who'll say like, oh, how did you hear about this park? And I'll look at them and I'll be like Rock Creek Park, like the national park? What do you mean, how did I hear about it? And so there's these slight microaggressions where it's a little overwelcoming or underwelcoming. And these are just things that just continue on and on. And so if we can talk about it, we can address it and we can start to remove some of these barriers. Next slide, please. So I believe you can't have one justice without the other. If you have green justice, you have racial justice, you have health justice. You can just keep going down, environmental justice. And I think when you have all of those together, then things will definitely be improved. And one of the small ways that I hope to achieve some of that is through the Nature RX that you had already heard about previously from our wonderful student, Sarah. And next slide, please. So I won't go into all of this, but basically our program is just basically, this way to celebrate our Arboretum and the other recreational spaces that can heal and preserve human health and well-being. I have these folks listed here, but it really was under the kind of the steam and the engine of it was the steering committee, including Dr. Sachs and so many other folks on the campus who helped launch this program and who are still helping, who I hope will come to the meeting on Tuesday at 10:30 so that we can continue to do more work in progress. Next slide, please. So we have 4 main goals. I'm not going to go into detail to all of them, but I want to get to this last goal of recognition because this is a goal that I kind of added on. So when we have the meeting on Tuesday, folks will probably be like, hey, where did this goal come from? Because a lot of times we were talking about the prescriptions and the education and the research, which are still the 3 main arms of Nature RX. But this last one of Nature nature RX recognition is something that I wanted to add on because I wanted to make sure we acknowledge the land that the university sits on, the land that was taken from the Piscataway people. I want to also make sure we acknowledge the fact the university had ties to slavery. And so all of this stuff, all the kind of the dirty laundry, I want to make sure that we kind of recognize it, and then we pay tribute to people, you pay tribute to our ancestors, and maybe there's other acts of atonement that we can do, but you can't think about that until we talk about it. Next slide, please. In our group, you're going to talk about these two different questions. The first is, how can campus nature arts program bridge the nature gap that I discussed? And then the second is, how can nature RX programs strengthen nature connection? And this nature connection, I can't talk, is for everyone, not just for students of color, but for everyone. Because, like, for example, I've had students who have said, well, what am I supposed to do out there? Like, I don't know, where am I going to charge my phone? That to me is showing that there's a disconnect to nature. So it's not just what I had just discussed, but it's the disconnect regardless of who you are. So if we get in our group, you introduce yourselves to everybody, select a moderator, select someone to take notes, and then select a reporter. And we will break out in for maybe 10 minutes and talk about both of these questions, so that when we come back, we can maybe hear some ideals and, have a nice little discussion. So Dorothy, maybe how many people? We got about 28 people. So maybe 5 groups. Is that a way to just randomly?
How many people would you like per group?
Just maybe there's 27 people left. So there's maybe just 5, just make 5 groups. So then there'll be one group that has that has 6 or that has 7, or I can't count, but 5 groups.
Great. Okay. I'm going to make the groups now and assign them automatically. So everybody will be coupled into a group, and then I will close down the breakout rooms in 10 minutes, Jennifer.
Perfect.
Excellent. Okay.
Okay, so we talked about a lot of different things. Some of them had to do with physical, even just on college campuses, that sometimes the green spaces are not as close as maybe students expect them to be. And so therefore students don't always have that experience. We also talked a lot about finding nature wherever you are, even in an urban area, and how some of that can be just awareness and mindfulness, and kind of opening the somatic senses to the greenness that is around you. And I can certainly speak to that on the UF campus, where in Gainesville, Florida, every body of water has an alligator in it. Yet I've had students who have gone to the lake on campus for the first time in 4 years and seen a gator and said, this is the first time I've seen a gator. So some of it is awareness. There are also, although, areas where, like it was mentioned with the UDC campus, that the plantings don't really support a sense of living architecture and of nature kind of being front and center. They just support the buildings. But we also, I think, talked, we found that 10 minutes was not nearly enough time to dive into any of it, that even with issues of being more aware of being kind of opening somatic senses, there is a systemic barrier, which includes safety concerns and also stereotypes. So, and I'm teaching a class actually using black faces, white spaces. So that's a discussion that I've been having with my own students, that you have to, in some ways, change the system in order to create more safe spaces, or to make sure the spaces are safe. And then, but also work, because access has not been equitably distributed, because BIPOC people have not felt safe in, and have not been safe in green spaces there, and haven't taken advantage of them. There's been stereotypes that then lead to underrepresentation of images of people of color in outdoor areas and in taking advantage of outdoor activity. So there are kind of a lot of things that have to change. I would also say, though, that since the whole Christian Cooper incident, and this is the work that I've been doing for the past year and a half or so, that there has been a huge movement on the part of people of color to kind of build these connections. You saw Black Birders Week, which happened a week after the Christian Cooper incident, which has happened again this week or this year, and then Black Mammologist Week. A lot of other ways in which people of color have been forming community and speaking out as a way of kind of taking back those spaces.
You know, Nina, it's funny. I was actually thinking I might have to link up with you and ask you to do a guest lecture from a class that I'm teaching.
Sure, I would love to.
Yeah, because it's a new class, actually. It won't be offered to fall of next year. But in any case, those are a lot of the things that I plan on touching on. But you guys made some really good points. And yeah, I didn't want to keep you guys stuck in there for like 15, 20 minutes, but I thought maybe just touch on it a little bit. Anybody else have anything in addition?
Jennifer, I'll share, and then if Jeanette has anything to add to our share, but we talked about some of the faith-based connections and how on campus, you know, with all of the different faith-based communities offering opportunities along trails, kind of what like Jeanette mentioned during her presentation, you know, with different maybe verses from different books, or let's say the Book of Nature, for instance, that really invokes that deep nature connection. Another is one thing I love about the nature and forest therapy practice is that it's very communal, so that people can go out into a group, be it a small or large group, where people can feel safe. And when they go into invitation, they pulse off to the level at which they feel safest. Some people like to go far away because they don't really want to be near people. Others might stay just within a distance where they can see others. And so it offers the sense of security, safety, and connectedness. And then also, Jeanette mentioned, I was very grateful about the multilingual piece, offering, if you have a trail with some signage on it, making sure that you can either, maybe in the audio guides, having different toggles for the audio solutions to different languages, or you know, signage, or even pamphlets, or whatever it may be that would guide people into that multilingual nature connection. We're working with the National Forest in Puerto Rico, the U.S. Forest Service, to implement the first ever bilingual nature and forest, or the first ever certified nature and forest therapy trail there, but it will be bilingual. And most of the guides who become certified forest therapy trail consultants weave in multilingual aspects to those trails. So those were some of the things that arose in our conversation. I wondered, Jeanette, did you have anything else to add?
You did an excellent review, Tamberly.
Okay. Thank you, Jeanette.
Well, I will add, so you guys all made some really great points. Our group, we talked about some of those similar issues, but we also talked about really like deliberately partnering, like for specifically in terms of any kind of campus nature arts programs, to deliberately partner with cultural groups, so that there is a partnership. Like, so for example, I was giving an example. I think on my campus this past week, they had like a bike run to the College Park aviation something. I don't know, I have read it. But in any case, if there was something where we had something nature oriented, and it was like maybe a nature walk to maybe an area where they're Piscataway people had a settlement or an area where certain African or certain slave quarter, like something that would couple like the walk and being outside nature with a cultural aspect. And so we talked about that partnership. And then the other thing we talked about was the importance of reflection. So, you know, if you're saying, hey, you guys come join us, but if you people who you're inviting, if the people who are always doing the inviting do not look like the invitees, there may be a disconnect. And so making sure there's a strong reflection. So that was one of the things that I'm happy about, having my partner with me on NatureRx, so we both can kind of come and there's heterogeneity in terms of how we represent NatureRx. So that reflection, so that it can help maybe debunk some of those stereotypes or even those kind of preconceived notions, particularly for kids who are maybe coming from places of inequity, coming from those concrete jungles. So then when they get on the campus and they're like, well, we don't have this back at home, so I don't need it. But now if you see someone who looks like you, who's like, no, it's fun, you might like it, you might need it, they may think a little bit differently. I don't know where we are with time, Dorothy. I feel like I'm talking too much. I just want to be
for a minute.
Oh, we got 10 minutes. Oh, okay.
Two.
Oh, okay, two. So any other final thoughts? If you want to go to the next slide, I don't think I had any. Yep, there's no more slides. So
Dawn, I want to elect Dawn from our group to talk a little bit. If we have time, if not, we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, we got 90 seconds.
Okay.
Please.
But Dawn, you're muted.
This is going to be a very quick plug for a project I've been involved with for the past couple of years. Laura Brown from the University of Connecticut and I have developed something called the Anti-Racism in the Outdoors Guide. We just call it the Arboretum Guide. It's a site where you can learn about a tremendous number of organizations that are dedicated to full access and welcoming of all people in the outdoors. And that site is now under resources on the campusnature.com site, as Dorothy has just pointed out. And I highly recommend that people go to the site where it's now housed, called the Joy Trip Project, because the person who curates that, James Edward Mills, is absolutely fabulous.
The question I had was, how would you like to apply the ideas presented today? What were you most excited about? And how do you think you'll move forward with this? And any other thing you really want to discuss? There was such amazing ideas that were presented today. And is there something that really stuck out with you? Or if you just want to have a great conversation like I did with Tamberly, because everybody else left my group. In the last one, Tamberly and I just had, it was lovely to get to know such an amazing person for 10 minutes. So if that's all you want to do and end your day with just discussing things that you are passionate about, go for it. So that was basically my slide, Dorothy, so don't worry about it.
Got it.
And,
Dorothy, maybe since there are
for the very last bit, because I do, for those who could not make it today, can you all see this thank you slide?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So for those who couldn't make it today, I do want to wrap it up just by saying thank you so much to all of the speakers today. Such wonderful, inspirational presentations, such a wonderful diversity of perspectives from many different types of campuses. Thanks so much to the CNRX steering committee and so much to Don Rakow for his invaluable advice on the symposium today and in general, guiding us in this network. Thanks so much to my co-organizers, Jennifer Roberts and Jeanette Henderson. Thanks to the William & Mary student partner, Abby Gutleben, for being, as we said, my security blanket today to make sure if there's any little bits and pieces that need to be taken care of that she could do that. And thanks so much, of course, to all the attendees for taking time out to either attend or watch this symposium in the future at some point. You can sign up for the CNRX newsletter see videos from last year's symposium, and learn more about the network at campusnature.com. You can also find out more about joining the network on our About page. The materials from this meeting will be posted on the website as well in the next couple of weeks. So again, thank you all so much for coming today and for sharing your time and inspiration with all of us.